Chapter 804. When Enchanting and the other two in the car heard the deafening noise above their heads, they all poked their heads out of the car to look at the sky. They didn't know it if they didn't look, but they were shocked by what they saw. The rolling thick smoke that covered the sky, the dazzling cold light that flew everywhere, the rumbling thunder mixed with the ear-piercing screech of the air being torn apart, and all kinds of strange forces that they had never seen before danced wildly in the sky. No matter how tough the three's nerves were after being trained by Qinguang, they still received a great shock. If it wasn't for the fear of disturbing Qinguang, who was madly speeding up, the three of them would have probably screamed in shock. Head, Enchanting's voice trembled as she cautiously reminded Qinguang. Enchanting really didn't want to admit that she was obviously a martial artist who possessed the unique skills of inner strength, but ever since she came to Mount Baylor with him, she seemed to have become a completely ignorant little girl who always liked to make a fuss. She also knew that she shouldn't be like this. This was not good, it was embarrassing, and it might make Qinguang feel annoyed. But she couldn't control herself at all. If I had a choice, would also want to have the demeanor of a general who wouldn't bat an eyelid even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of me. But I really can't do it. Everything I see is more terrifying than Mount Tai collapsing, okay? What is that black light? Why did the stones that were shone on by this light inexplicably turn into powder? The road was so strangely and neatly broken earlier, it was probably caused by this thing, right? There was also the yellow sand, which could actually cut a hole in the mountain when it scraped against it. And that monster with two arms that looked like two big knives, aren't you afraid of falling to your death by rushing down like that? And that round stone is also a person? That's right. This is a person. There's a faintly discernible face on the stone. Enchanting retracted her head, her heart beating wildly as she reminded in a low voice. She looked nervously at Qinguang, hoping that he could come up with a solution. Wu Miaowan and Lu Fei, who were sitting in the back row, were not any better. They could only place their hopes on Qinguang and stare at him. In the end, old Master Guang, whom everyone regarded as their last hope, was still whistling and calmly stepping on the accelerator, not even batting an eyelid. The three of them saw that he had a calm expression on his face. He didn't care about the strange sounds above his head, nor did he care about the smoke and dust rising from the falling rocks in front of him. They were stunned. Could it be that he was planning to use his speed to rush over? That's right, this could still be considered as a method. Something wasn't right. If there were living monsters among the things that fell, they couldn't have escaped so easily, right? Quick, think of something. Ruffy cried out. Lord Guang snapped his fingers. All right, beautiful lady, as you wish. Don't just talk. It was about to fall. It's about to hit us. Wu Miaowan screamed at the top of her lungs. She stuck her head out and stared at the ceiling above her. Her scalp was about to explode. Oh, boundless earth. Heed my command. The root of all things. Become my helper. The soul of the earth, freeze. Shatter. Destroy. As urgent as my command. Qinguang finally made a move. He still had both hands on the steering wheel, but in order to make himself appear more serious and cautious, like an Earth Grand Magus with an attitude, he made up another set of incantations. It was an extended version, and he chanted it out like a machine gun. The effect of acting mysterious was very obvious. At the very least, the other three people in the car were stunned by his long incantation. Although he looked more like a racer at the moment, and not a magician in Harry Potter who held a magic wand and held a magic manual while chanting, compared to his previous incantation, since it was so long, its power must be frightening, right? That's right, he chanted it so fast that he couldn't even hear what he was chanting, let alone the others. Of course, as he chanted the incantation, he also tried to control the Earth Burster's superpower. At the beginning, it was unfamiliar to him, but he gradually got used to it. It was the same with superpowers. The more he used them, the more effective they became. With a thought, an extremely mysterious wave surged out of his body, surging like a boulder being thrown into a lake. It spread out in all directions at the same speed as the electromagnetic wave. In an instant, she and the other 7 people were all shrouded in this wave. The loud rumbling suddenly disappeared, and it was even more abrupt than when it came. It was like a change from extreme movement to extreme stillness. It was so abrupt that it made Enchanting and the other 2 feel nauseous. The 3 of them stretched their heads to look at the sky, and for a moment, they were completely stunned. If it wasn't for the fact that the car was still speeding forward, they would have thought that time had stopped. The pitch-black light that seemed to be able to corrode everything froze, and the rolling yellow sand that filled the sky stopped moving. It didn't even float normally. The boulder that rolled down was inexplicably floating in the air. The 3 of them could even vaguely see the frightened faces that appeared on the boulder from time to time. As for the monster that was waving its blade-like arms, it was even more amusing. It floated there motionlessly, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. It was like a doll that was tied up with a rope. An indescribable sense of despair and powerlessness rose in she and the others' hearts. Previously, they thought that when Sergio died, there was at least an intense fight, but now they knew that they were ridiculously wrong. Right Chen and they weren't on the same level at all. Was this the power of the legendary elemental controller? They had no idea how Right Chen had attacked, nor did they know what had happened. However, the elemental power that they were so proud of had been completely sealed in an instant. Even their connection with the elemental core had been completely cut off. It was as if the world had been covered by an extremely dense and intricate net. This large net bound everything firmly, and even Sergio, who could turn into sand, was unable to escape. Every grain of sand that he had turned into was also trapped in midair. The difference between them was no longer as simple as an ant and an elephant. Even if an ant faced a giant elephant, it could at least move a little. Even if it was stomped flat, it could at least struggle a little. However, the 8 of them were completely frozen in place with just a thought from the other party. Even their thoughts seemed to have slowed down by half a beat, let alone struggling. In a daze, an indescribable feeling suddenly rose in the hearts of the 8 of them. This feeling came abruptly and without warning, but it was extremely violent. It surged up from the bottom of their hearts like a tidal wave, and was unstoppable. In an instant, it completely engulfed the 8 of them's consciousness. They were still frozen in midair, but they seemed to hear a faint summoning sound in their ears. This summoning sound was as soft as a whisper, so much so that they couldn't hear it clearly. However, when this sound rang out, the souls of the 8 of them trembled violently. This summoning seemed to have come from their ancestors, and it was very strong. They clearly knew that this might be taking their lives, but they just couldn't summon the slightest bit of resistance in their hearts. This wasn't because Chen Guang had used some evil technique like the bewitching demonic sound. In fact, he had only completely released the aura and elemental waves of his earth-paced exploder. But for the 8 of them, the level of the earth-paced exploder was too high. For elemental creatures, the level suppression was deeply rooted in the depths of their souls. Back then, after Chen Guang absorbed the crystal cores of 4 types of earth creatures, he didn't even have the slightest resistance against the super-weakened version of the Chaos Being's black hole ability. Now, the level of his earth-paced exploder was even higher than that of the Chaos Being. Although the aura of World 1 to World 8 seemed to be a little stronger than that of the Destruction Being, that was only because they were native earth elemental creatures in this Dolua world. They were originally in their prime, but in fact, their level of life wasn't as good as that of the Destruction Being. At most, they could only be compared to the Ripper. In the face of Chen Guang, the true master of the punishment realm, the difference in level was infinitely magnified. The attraction of the earth-paced exploder's elemental waves was simply like a drug addict. Even though they knew that it was a dead end in a pit of fire, they still wanted to jump into it. Dying in the hands of the other party wasn't painful, but a kind of glory. Reason told World 1 and the others that they must persevere. They must not indulge in the call from their ancestors, but their emotions were completely out of control. The BMW 3 Series was still speeding on the road, and World 1 and the others who were fixed in mid-air were gradually left behind. Enchanting and the other two who were only in charge of the car looked back and heaved a long sigh of relief. I was scared to death. It was a close shave. Chief Great Magician is mighty. Chen Guang smiled. It's not over yet. Ah. Lu Fei was shocked. Chen Guang asked again, do you want to see fireworks? Fireworks? The three of them didn't quite understand what he meant, and asked blankly. Chen Guang nodded, that's right, fireworks. With a snap, he suddenly snapped his fingers, and an even more deafening sound came from behind. When the three women heard this, they turned their heads and saw the colorful objects floating in the air explode. It was just like what he said, they were like gorgeous fireworks in the night sky. Chen Guang placed his left hand outside the car door and his right hand on the steering wheel. Without a sound, 8 colorful lights flew over from behind like meteors and landed in his hand. His left hand silently squeezed, crushing the objects in his palm and absorbing them. After that, he focused on driving again. World 1 and the others were ultimately unable to resist the pressure that came from the depths of their souls. After the commotion passed, everything returned to normal. World 1 and the others are dead. They all died at the same time. The expressions of the 3 elders in the world-shattering base, who were originally waiting for Chen Guang to walk into the trap, changed drastically. Elder Anai even roared in anger. Elder 2 turned his head and glared at 3rd Elder Walter, what's going on? Didn't I tell them not to act blindly without thinking? Walter clenched his teeth. I did warn World 1, but it's obvious that he didn't listen to my orders and acted on his own. Damn it. We can't just let it go like this. We have to punish them together. Punish their families severely. They were obviously trying to get their hands on the Saint Nucleus in advance. Elder 2 changed the topic and said, ahem, Walter, you can't say that. We are of the same race. I believe you understand the attraction of the Saint Nucleus to our world-shattering holy tribe. Of course, it might not be World 1 who took the initiative. It could also be that Right Chen discovered them and took the initiative to attack. Great Elder. This. Walter seemed to be unwilling to accept this. Elder 2 waved his hand. All right, Sher Shah and the others have arrived, right? Let them imprison the hostages in the prison, then let all the titled warriors go to the first secret room. Elder Anai and Walter's expressions changed. Have you decided to use the final weapon so quickly? Great Elder nodded heavily. There's no other choice. Since Right Chen could kill World 1 and the others at the same time, it means that he is indeed very strong. There's a saying in the low-level world, even a lion uses its full strength to catch a rabbit. It's never wrong to be cautious. About 7 or 8 minutes later, Chen Guang finally stopped the car. Chapter 805. In front of him was an iron gate disguised as a stone wall. Outside of this iron gate was the end of the Baylor Mountain Scenic Road. The iron gate was built on top of a mountain. Looking up from the entrance, it was a towering mountain that towered into the clouds. If he wasn't 100% sure that Shui Lin was locked behind the iron gate about 4 to 5 kilometers away, even he would have almost been fooled by this perfectly disguised iron gate. Without much effort, he waved his hand, and the mountain near the iron gate disintegrated. The iron gate, which was about 4 to 5 meters tall, collapsed with a loud bang. He reignited the engine and turned on the lights. The wheels rolled over the fallen iron gate and slowly entered the pitch-black tunnel. After passing through the tunnel, it was another world. Perhaps this was the most beautiful place in Baylor Mountain. As far as the eye could see, the green trees were like a carpet, and the broad-leaved forest in early autumn seemed to still grow lush in the humid and warm air. A forest path led straight into the depths. The 4 of them got out of the car and walked forward side by side. This forest path seemed to have people coming and going all year round. The places where their feet landed were trampled until not even a blade of grass grew. The shrubs and flowers on both sides of the road were trampled until they were crooked. There were huge footprints on the soft ground that extended all the way inside, indicating that a large number of people had passed through here not long ago. Ridiculous. White Chen actually dared to bring those 3 women along. In the conference room, Ward waved his arms agitatedly, half roaring and half in surprise. Elder Earth grinned. Isn't this good? We now have 3 more hostages. Elder and I looked at the calm Chen Guang in the monitor and said with some worry, could it be that he has absolute confidence in dealing with us, so he didn't take it seriously at all? Are you kidding me? What right does he have to look down on us? When he stole the sacred nucleus 300 years ago, wasn't he also chased by us? Elder Earth was full of confidence. At this moment, someone knocked on the door of the conference room. Elder Earth raised his eyebrows. Come in. A lump of mud at the door first poked its head inside, then said in a very nervous tone, reporting to Great Elder, it's that. Sure Shah, Walter interrupted the mud, what's wrong with the world sand? I'm not sure. He's always spouting nonsense and is unwilling to cooperate. Why don't the 3 elders come and take a look together? The mudman's voice became softer and softer. The Earth Elder stood up angrily. Nonsense. What time is it now? Why are you still making a fuss? Let's go. Let's go take a look. In the first secret room of the Broken World base, Sher Shah was shouting at the other 17 people, you've all been tricked. This is a scam. You will all die. There was no such thing as eternal life. There was no world-shattering Saint Clan. We are not some stone monsters. The other 17 people looked at him as if they were looking at a madman. There was sympathy, jealousy, and pity, but most of them were anger, as if they had been betrayed. He didn't know what was wrong with him. Since last night, he had been having a strange dream. In this strange dream, he was not the strongest sacred warrior of the world-shattering holy tribe, but an orphan born in China on Earth. Maybe he wasn't an orphan. Maybe he had parents, but they were kidnapped by human traffickers when he was very young. The memory was too old, and he wasn't sure. He only knew that for as long as he could remember, he had been living in this beautiful base. He always liked to sneak to the small lake behind the base to play with the sand. He also liked to hold a fishing rod and sit by the small lake to fish. He was very good at fishing and could catch a full basket in less than half a day. However, he never ate the fish he caught. Instead, he threw them back into the lake and told these stupid fish not to be so stupid in the future. There was no such thing as bait falling from the sky. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Later, he gradually grew taller. Then he had to sit in classes with those older than him and be taught all kinds of knowledge by the teachers. Sher Shah actually didn't like to learn, but whenever he wanted to slack off, he would be hung up and whipped. No matter how he begged for mercy, it was meaningless. So he gritted his teeth and learned. But suddenly, one day, according to what he had learned, he used the sharp dagger in his hand to slash a childhood playmate that he had grown up with. Only then did he suddenly realize that all along, what his teachers had taught him was the ability to kill. He didn't understand. They were all humans, so why did they have to kill? There were so many things in the world that they couldn't finish. Everyone could live, so why did they have to let someone die? He asked this question to the most kind teacher in his heart. The result was that he was thrown into a cage with 3 other children. He would never forget what that kind teacher said before he left. Either the 3 of you kill Sher Shah, or the 3 of you die in the hands of Sher Shah. World-shattering doesn't need saints. You are killers, weapons, not humans. 3 days later, this teacher came to open the cage. Sher Shah and the 3 corpses had been waiting for him for 2.5 days. Sher Shah roughly understood something. Killing wasn't for food. Sometimes, it was for a simpler reason, survival. He couldn't find the answer to which was more valuable, 1 life or 3 lives. But in order to live alone, he chose to let the other 3 die, using the things he forced himself to learn. Sher Shah couldn't forget the teacher's joyful eyes when he opened the door. At that time, he didn't understand why this teacher would be happy. "I killed people, I killed my own kind, shouldn't you be angry and sad?" Later on, he gradually understood. From then on, his life seemed to have entered a dead end. Every other year, he would be thrown into the cage with the others. The only difference was that the cage got bigger and bigger. More and more people were thrown in with him. Other than him, the other people were getting older and stronger. The only thing that didn't change was this teacher's request. Every time, he had to live alone or everyone else. Until a certain day 2 years ago, when he walked out of the cage for the last time, he had his own name. He wasn't called Little Life because he liked to play with sand. His name was Sher Shah. He became the youngest titled killer in the world, shattering at the age of 16. At the same time, he became the strongest titled killer. On this day, he killed the last person in his life, the teacher who had always thrown him into a cage. He swore that he would never take the initiative to kill anyone ever again, and he would never allow anyone to kill in front of him. Unlike other titled killers, at the age of 16, he went to the lake behind the base and built a wooden house. He lived there for 2 years. During these 2 years, the world shattering wanted him to go on a mission more than once, which was to kill people. However, his answer was very simple. "Either you kill me or you let me live here quietly." The 3 elders couldn't understand why the world shattering's perfect talent nurturing system would produce a freak who refused to kill but was shockingly strong. It wasn't the first time that the 3 of them had the thought of eliminating him, but in the end, they couldn't bear to part with the most talented young killer in history. They thought that since he was harmless, they might as well let him live by the lake alone, with the sand and the stupid fish in the lake. From then on, he lived by the lake alone. During these 2 years, only the other person who had a similar fate as him, the World Blade, would come to visit him from time to time and chat with him. However, Sher Shah hated the World Blade because he would always grab the fattest fish from the fish that he had planned to release and roast it. Then, he would force Sher Shah to eat it. But forget it. It wasn't bad to have someone to chat with from time to time. This continued all the way until last night. Sher Shah didn't know why he left the lake and returned to the base. He couldn't remember why he led people to deal with the invaders in a daze. His mind was always muddled. It seemed that he didn't live by the lake alone because he didn't want to go out and kill people. Instead, it was because there was something called the Earth Saint Core in the lake. He was the most talented young warrior in the world-shattering holy tribe. He was born with the ability to communicate with all the earth elements and absorb them. Therefore, he became the most important ultimate weapon in the tribe. That was why he was arranged to live by the lake and communicate with the power of the elements. 2 different life experiences clashed in his mind. He couldn't tell which was a dream and which was reality. Both of these lives were very real. However, he knew that only one of them was real. The problem was, which one was real? When he led the team to ambush Shui Lin and the others, he had been thinking about this matter. Therefore, he seemed to be absent-minded. However, the others executed the order to capture him alive perfectly. Escorting the hostages from the periphery of Mount Baral into the mountain, he looked at these monster companions who made him feel close and familiar, and he became even more confused. He looked at the quicksand in his palm again and felt a little more at ease. In any case, only this sand could bring a little peace of mind to his empty heart. He thought to himself, maybe the assassin thing was a dream, or maybe that was my previous life. He didn't know what was wrong with him. He really wanted to talk to the others. But he didn't know how to speak. He didn't want to be treated as an alien. He felt that these 2 memories of him might be a great secret. Until later, when one of his companions killed a living person in front of him, he suddenly lost control of his emotions. He killed this companion on the spot and crushed his crystal core. This companion's memory inexplicably gushed out from the exploded crystal core, turned into fragments, and returned to his body with his own sand. Only then did he know that each of his companions had the memory of being an assassin in the past. But they were different from him. They learned the elemental abilities of the world-shattering holy tribe and the techniques of assassins at the same time. Sometimes, they passed through the barrier between the Dolua world and the low-level world to carry out all kinds of assassination missions in the low-level world. This was to earn money that they thought was worthless. It was also to train themselves and obtain more power so that they could invade that world one day. So, he wasn't the only one who was once an assassin apprentice. But why do I feel that this is ridiculous? Obtaining the memory of his dead companion should have made him believe that he was the strongest genius in the world-shattering holy tribe. But in the end, no matter how he pieced together the timeline in his heart, the two memories couldn't overlap. Not only did the two lives not merge, but they became further and further apart. This obsession lasted until he and the other 17 titled rankers were called to the spacious secret room number 1. Shi Ren and the others decided to end their own lives. When they gathered all their power into their own body, Shi Sha's obsession finally erupted. That was why Shi Sha had shouted out the words he had said earlier. That's right. He had already said that he wouldn't kill anymore, but he had already killed one of his companions today. If these 17 people also chose to commit suicide, they would die because of him. I definitely won't accept it. Chapter 806. When Elder Earth and the other two entered the first secret room, they heard Shi Sha arguing with the others. Why don't you believe me? Why? This is ridiculous. This isn't real. We are all humans. We are the same as the people in your so-called low-class world. Are you all crazy? How can there be such a ridiculous thing in this world? No one can revive after death. This was Shi Sha's voice. You are the one who is crazy, right? Shi Sha. You disappoint us. What's wrong with you? Wake up. You are Shi Sha. You are the most talented warrior of our sacred clan. The elders put in so much effort for you and even let you live beside the sacred lake. How can you say something like this? I have always treated you as my most respected elder brother. This was Shi Sha's best friend, Shi Ren. A brawny man at the side said indifferently, Shi Ren, why are you talking nonsense with him? I have already told the elders. What's the use of a genius who doesn't even want to kill? Look at his ridiculous look. How can we trust him with our ability? How can he become the strongest warrior of our clan? Elder Ward said that Right Chen might have become an elemental controller. Look at Shi Sha. Even if he becomes the ultimate weapon, what can he do? In the darkness, a shadowy figure said, Shi is right. How can the broken sacred clan, which lives on killing and destruction, allow a weak and cowardly person to become the ultimate weapon? Let me do it. Shut up. Shi. What right do you have to be compared with Brother Shi Sha? Your body can't withstand our power. This is the elders' decision. It has been decided since Brother Shi Sha was born. No one can change it. However, Shi Ren spoke up for Shi Sha. You incompetent follower, do you think that with you speaking up for him, he will be able to shoulder the responsibility he should have? He is the one who got cold feet, not me who wants to replace him. That's right, Shi Ren. Wake up. Compared to us, he is just a piece of trash. So what if he is a genius? So what if he has the potential to become the ultimate weapon? He is crazy now. Do you understand? He said that the Shattering Saint tribe doesn't exist. How dare you say that we're just like those lowly mortals? How dare you say that our elemental powers are imaginary? Do you know what this means? He was denying the 10,000-year inheritance of the saints. He's insulting all of us. More and more titled rankers joined the camp of denouncing the world sand. World Blade's lips trembled. He didn't know what to say. He turned back to look at Shi Sha, who was still deep in thought, with some pain and helplessness. Then, he turned back and tried to explain something. Looking at World Blade, who was in a heated argument with the others, Shi Sha felt even worse. Actually, upon thinking about it, he did not seem to care about the lives and deaths of the others. Only World Blade was someone that he cared about. Sher Shah couldn't accept seeing him die in front of him no matter what. Brother Shisha, wake up. We don't have much time to waste. Right Chen is almost here. Look at my hand, look at my strength. Feel it for yourself. How could such a powerful force be fake? You have always been the most powerful person among us. Are you going to deny your own strength? World Blade turned around and grabbed Sher Shah's shoulder and shook him violently. Behind him, there were countless incomparably tough pitch-black blades that were flickering with a dim light as they floated in midair. This was World Blade's ability. He could transform his body into an incomparably tough and unique obsidian stone. Then, he could form these innumerable dark light blades that were floating in midair. They possessed shocking cutting ability. Sher Shah raised his hand slightly. The surging quicksand in his palm seemed to have become more intense due to the fluctuation of his emotions. World Blade placed his finger on the quicksand. The dark yellow quicksand instantly crushed his finger into pieces. Countless pitch-black powder shot out from the spot where World Blade's finger and the quicksand were mixed together. Did you see that? You didn't even use your true strength. Your quicksand can still completely destroy my obsidian finger. Brother Sher Shah. As World Blade spoke, he pressed his palm against the quicksand in Sher Shah's palm. He even wanted to crush his entire arm into pieces. Enough. It's really enough. This is a dream. A nightmare. Sher Shah suddenly shouted and pushed World Blade to the back. He raised his head and looked at the other 16 people. He understood everyone's gaze. World Blade's disappointment, Sher Ying's jealousy, Sher Sher's disdain, and even more people's completely incomprehensible gazes. He thought to himself that he was probably a lunatic in the eyes of these people. But how could they understand that in my eyes, all of you are also crazy, bewitched by a demon? Perhaps there was a saying that was true. In the eyes of a lunatic, he was the only normal person in this world. Elder Earth stretched out his hand gently and pushed open the door. He took the lead and entered. Elder Anai and Elder Ward followed closely behind him. The atmosphere in the first secret room changed instantly because of Elder Earth's appearance. Great Elder, did you hear what Sher Shah said just now? Sher Ying's figure floated to the door unknowingly as he spoke softly. Elder Earth didn't answer him. Instead, he looked around and said in a deep voice, just now, the 8 of them were all killed in battle. Actually, I didn't want to tell you about this because I didn't want to give Sher Shah too much pressure. But now, the world-shattering holy tribe has reached its final moment of life and death. Wate Chen's strength is beyond our imagination. Although World 1 and the 8 of them aren't as strong as all of you, they are still the most elite sacred warriors of our tribe. Furthermore, they have more battle experience than you titled warriors. But the fact is that they couldn't resist Wate Chen at all. Because the 8 of them were instantly killed at the same time. They couldn't even synchronize their battle memories with us. After Elder Earth finished speaking, he turned to look at Sher Shah and said softly, Sher Shah, I know you're kind. Although I don't understand why a weirdo like you appeared in the world-shattering holy tribe, you're indeed our last hope. Perhaps you're right. You can treat all of this as a dream. But you can't deny that even if this is a dream, he's here to kill us. If you can't become the final weapon, Wate Chen won't let any one of our tribe off. Elder and I also said, that's right. But if you're willing to shoulder the responsibility you should bear, kill Wate Chen, and take back the Earth Saint Core, World Blade, and the others will be revived. Our world-shattering holy tribe will also be able to escape from the tragic fate of being trapped in this magic barrier forever. We'll be able to rule the low-level worlds and become one of the royal clans of the Dolua world. Although Walter really wanted to nurture Sher Ying, nobody could deny that only Sher Shah could absorb everyone's power into him. This wasn't the time to be selfish. He also said in a deep voice, we're elemental life forms. As long as the elements aren't destroyed, our lives won't be destroyed. Even if the crystal core shatters, the Earth Saint Core can nurture a new self. Sher Shah. Don't hesitate any longer. Do you really want to watch all of our hopes be buried in your hands? Don't you want to become a great existence like our ancestor? I've said it before. This is an illusion. Sher Shah still said stubbornly. World Blade, do it. If he's really so heartless that he's willing to see all of you die in vain, then let him be the last sinner of our tribe. Elder Earth silently closed his eyes. In the depths of his mind, he could already vaguely sense the magical wave that Wate Chin was emitting as he got closer. How powerful. That was simply an unparalleled feeling. The trembling feeling that came from the depths of his soul clearly told Elder Earth that Wate Chen's power might have already exceeded everyone's imagination. Elder Earth was not the only one who felt this. Even the other titled warriors could sense the innate disparity between them, which brought about an unrivaled sense of oppression. Wate Chen is coming. Ward's lips trembled slightly. He looked at the Earth Elder with extreme fear. Never in his wildest dreams did he think that the thief Grand Magus would become so terrifying. Both of them only had a slight contact with each other's aura, and he actually had a desire to die in his hands. Sher Shah. Have you still not woken up? Whether it's an illusion or not, whether we're the real world-shattering holy tribe or not, is it important? What's important is that if we don't think of something, we're going to die together soon. Even if we're really just an insignificant assassin organization like you said. But Wate Chen is also here to take our lives. Elder Earth shrieked. Sher Shah looked at the three elders who were getting more and more hysterical. Then, he looked at World Blade and the rest who were sitting on the 17 platforms in the first secret room and were slowly closing their eyes. There were some things that he might never understand. Why were there only two choices, assassins and the world-shattering holy tribe? Why did they have to kill? Wasn't it better to be an ordinary person and live on their own? This familiar question made his memories surge like a tide. He seemed to have returned to his childhood when he first asked this question to his teacher. However, he knew that he couldn't find the answer. At least, there was no answer here. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions sounded one after another in the first secret room. All kinds of radiance were dispersing from the bodies of World Blade and the rest. If you don't sit on it, they're going to die for nothing. Elder Earth pointed at the largest platform in the middle of the secret room. Sher Shah turned around slowly like a walking corpse and sat down. As for Chen Guang's side, the four of them walked side by side. From time to time, one or two ambushers would fall from the ground or from the big tree above them. They looked mighty and powerful, but they were useless. They would only become nutrients for the elemental core. The closer they got to the base, the higher the frequency of the ambushes and the fiercer the attacks. At the same time, the number of people who appeared increased. In the beginning, Enchanting and the rest were frightened and nervous. However, as time passed, the three of them were infected by Chen Guang's seemingly leisurely stroll. Chapter 807. No one sympathized with the monsters that had died in his hands. Before they became monsters, they were terrorists who deserved to die. Their hands were stained with blood. After becoming a monster, there was one more reason to kill it. This was a good thing for Chen Guang. After all, the old man was a good person with a Buddha's heart. Who would want to kill someone for no reason? The current situation was good. It was just crushing a rock. That was how calm he was. Chen Guang was also puzzled. Ever since he became the Earth Burner, absorbing other people's abilities did not change the attribute of his own ability. He also could not absorb the characteristics of other people's abilities. No matter what ability the other party had, it would be reduced to the most basic elemental attribute and absorbed by him to strengthen the Earth Burner power in his body. Forget it. The current situation was not bad. He felt that he was already very high-end. Although the name, Soy Sauce Explosion, wasn't a nice name, this ability was really comfortable to use. No matter how cool and awesome the enemy looked, all he had to do was use his brain, shake his fingers, blink his eyes, pretend to be mysterious and recite an incantation, and the enemy would directly self-destruct on the spot. He was like a bulldozer, crushing everything in his path without any worries. This feeling of being unrivaled was really intoxicating. He was reluctant to leave. What a pity. When the punishment world ended, this ability would disappear. He was reluctant to leave. Finally, after passing through a dense forest, the tall walls of the base appeared in front of them. Shui Lin was about 200 to 300 meters ahead. She seemed to be underground. She was probably locked in a prison. Looks like it's heavily guarded. Enchanting said. Wu Miaowan focused. There are shadows on the walls. They should be monsters hiding. Lu Fei gulped. This should be the monster's lair. Why don't Qinguang think of a way to go around and observe? Inside the base, the three elders were sitting in the conference room. In front of the three of them was the monitor. Qinguang and the three women behind him were shown. Humph. Right, Chen is still as lecherous as before. He even brought women to fight us. He will die in the hands of women sooner or later. Ward clenched his teeth. No, not sooner or later, but now. Pass down the order that everyone must do their best. Even if he dies, it doesn't matter. As long as we have enough time, the strongest warrior in the history of the Shattering Saint tribe will be born. He will defend the glory of the Saint tribe. The Earth Elder waved his hand and then glared fiercely at Qinguang on the screen. Do it. As soon as Elder Earth's voice fell, the three elders flew up together, smashed through the window and flew to the square outside. In mid-air, the three elders revealed their true forms. The Earth Elder transformed into a green raw stone with a diameter of about 100 feet. Mist lingered around him, and the raw stone was densely covered with mysterious patterns, full of vicissitudes of history. The Earth Elder's main body was called the Stone of History. Elder Ni, on the other hand, transformed into a mass of golden mud that floated in the air. At times, it would spread out horizontally and cover the entire base. At other times, it would condense together and transform into a golden armored clay giant general. Elder Ni's main body was called the heaven-swallowing living soil. As for Third Elder Ward, his round body was about 70 to 80 feet in diameter. As he floated in the air, most of his body was azure blue like the ocean, while the other half was a mixture of green and yellow. His main body rotated slowly, and white mist lingered around him. He looked like a miniature Earth. Elder Ward's main body was called the Primordial Star. These three elders represented the ultimate evolution of three types of Earth elemental powers. Even though they were imaginary existences created by the punishment realm, their true level was close to that of an Earth ruler. Perhaps they were insignificant in the endless realm of the gods, but this was only a low-level world created by Qinguang's will under the heavenly Holy Grail. When the monsters in the square saw the three elders reveal their true forms, they were so overwhelmed by Qinguang's mental wave that they were almost suffocating. In the huge square, the crowd was stirred up. Roars rose into the sky, and the ground shook. Even Ouyang Tianxing, who was hiding 100 meters underground, felt the tremors. Three loud booms rang out. The three elders' main bodies fell to the ground, and a buzzing sound suddenly rang out. About 7 to 8 kilometers in the sky, a huge hexagram magic formation that was more than 10 kilometers wide appeared out of nowhere. It almost covered the entire sky. Rays of golden light poured down from the magic formation like a dense drizzle. The drizzle fell on the world's Shatterer warriors, and each of them seemed to be plated with a layer of golden light. When the rain-like radiance covered the ground, another golden magic formation gradually appeared on the ground. It was the same size as the hexagram in the sky. The drizzle of light poured down and fell on the magic formation on the ground. Dense mist slowly surged up from the magic formation on the ground and rose into the sky. The earth elemental power flowed between the two magic formations in a continuous cycle. The two magic formations, one above and one below, resonated with each other and formed an independent space in the punishment realm. It was mysterious and unfathomable. The warriors of the World Shatterer Holy Tribe were excited, but their expressions changed. They were heartbroken and touched. The three elders had used the sacred tribe's forbidden skill. No matter how the battle ended, the three elders' realms would regress. They might even lose their warrior titles. Endless Reincarnation Wheel. That's the Endless Reincarnation Wheel. Oh my God. Brothers and sisters. The sacred tribe is at the final moment of life and death. We have no way out. We must kill Right Chen. We must take back the sacred core. That's right. For the elders. For the sacred tribe. The hustle and bustle outside was blocked by the thick walls of secret room number 1. Sher Shah was still sitting cross-legged on the platform, but the other 17 titled warriors had completely disappeared. Above his head, 17 rays of light that represented different attributes revolved around him. They looked like planets orbiting a star to form a galaxy. But strangely, there was nothing in the center of the galaxy. If Qin Guang was here, with his highest earth elemental senses, he might be able to see that there wasn't really nothing above Sher Shah's head. There was a formless, colorless, miniature black hole. Compared to the other World Shatterer Holy Tribe warriors, Sher Shah was born with a chaotic body. This chaotic body was the same attribute as the crystal core of the Earth chaotic ones. What's going on? Looking up at the two enormous hexagram arrays between heaven and earth, Xi and Qin and the others were at a loss. The hexagram array was beautiful, but it contained endless murderous intent. It made the three mortals tremble from the bottom of their souls. Qin Guang's expression didn't change. He activated his paragon powers and flew into the air. At the same time, the ground began to move. In the center of the array, soil suddenly emerged. The soil grew naturally like a plant. In an instant, it formed a dome above Xi and Qin and the others, protecting them inside. Three beautiful ladies, you stay here. Next, it's Right Chen's job. Qin Guang turned around and smiled at the three of them. For safety's sake, he'd even added several layers of attributes to the dome. The Shaker's endless regeneration allowed the dome to quickly recover no matter how much damage it received. The Shredder's absolute sturdiness made the dome indestructible. The Paragon's field of force could repel and weaken an enemy's attack before it even reached them. The Destroyer's disintegration. Any attack that wasn't strong enough couldn't even get close. It would disintegrate into the most basic elemental energy. The most incredible was the inverse chaos power that Qin Guang had added. It had the same origin as the chaos ones, but its mechanism was completely opposite. In human science, a black hole with no exit wasn't the end. On the other side of a black hole was a white hole with no exit. What he'd used was the power of a white hole that only the Marmalade Exploder could control. Perhaps it was because the power he had unleashed was too profound, too complex, and the rules were getting higher and higher, causing this seemingly unremarkable dome to instantly possess an inconceivable realm. There were even faint rumbles of thunder on it, and with each rumble of thunder, space-time cracks would appear indistinctly. Even Lioli couldn't help but roar in his heart. Enough. Didn't I just remind you? I told you not to use too much force and kill your hostage. Are you blind? Can't you see that space is about to collapse? This world of punishment can't take the power you've put on that pile of dirt. Qin Guang glared at her and quickly put it away. Sorry. I was too pretentious. I thought I wouldn't be able to use this power for long, so I wanted to have some fun. Won't be able to use it for long, my ass. What? Nothing. You better hurry up. These lowly elemental creatures have more or less understood that they don't have a chance. If they kill their hostage first, you'll be in big trouble. Qin Guang nodded. He quickly turned around and waved at the dome. I'll be right back. Looking at the colorful dome that seemed to contain the entire world, he was curious. After all, this was the old man's power. Should he touch it and see how powerful it was? Bang! Just as he touched it, he was sent flying by the dome that seemed to break through the limits of space and time in the world of punishment. He flew towards the tall walls of the base like a cannonball. Elder 2 and the other two who had transformed into their original forms to control the endless reincarnation wheel array were completely speechless. The dome that Qinguang had casually created was within the array that the three of them were controlling. How could they not sense it? This is the origin of the world. This is the end of the earth element. This isn't a power that the Dolua world can take. What exactly happened to Right Chen's body? Elder 2 finally lost his composure and screamed. Elder and I cried bitterly. He's not an elemental controller. He's basically a god. No, this pile of dirt that he created is the ancestral god of our earth element. This isn't the end, this is the starting point. Volcanoes erupted on the planet that Walter had transformed into. In an instant, it changed from an Earth-like planet to a desolate Mars filled with volcanic craters. It seems like a world of Earth element is being nurtured in that pile of dirt. I really want to die in there. Chapter 808. Ward. Wake up. That's Right Chen's sorcery. He's trying to kill us. The Earth Elder gnashed his teeth and roared furiously from the stone of history that he had transformed into. Ward's voice came from the primordial star. He sounded hesitant and unwilling. Great Elder, I can't hold on any longer. The Earth Elder's roar came from the heaven-devouring growing soil again. If you're already like this, the others will be in even more danger. As expected, the thousands of soldiers in the World Shatterer were rooted to the ground. They couldn't even budge, let alone muster up their fighting spirit. Ward shouted from the primordial star, "Why is this happening? Why? If we don't think of something, we'll surrender without a fight." The three elders of the World Shatterer were indeed unlucky. If Qinguang had only brought the four abilities of the Earth Chaos Being into the punishment realm, he might have been in for a tough battle. It was hard to tell who would emerge victorious in the end. However, the Earth Chaos Being was instantly killed by the unstoppable slicing force when the space-time tunnel closed, leaving behind half of its crystal core. The tragic fate of the World Shatterer was destined. Although the Earth Chaos Being's name wasn't very elegant, his realm was truly high. Qinguang was like a Tyrannosaurus Rex that had stepped into a sheep pen. He was tyrannical, bully, and unreasonable. Before entering, he had gone through a tough battle with the Earth Family Bucket. It could only be said that it was worth it. The amount of sweat, blood, and tears he had put in was equivalent to the amount of return he would receive. Even though the punishment realm was supposed to punish him, it actually followed the principle of how much effort he put in and how much he would receive. He was the only one who could hold on after fighting so fiercely against the Earth Family Bucket Barrel. It was impossible to count how many times his body was shattered and how many times he was on the verge of death. Although he could recover every time, the pain and bitterness were too numerous to count. At this moment, he was like a fruit planted with blood and sweat in spring. Now that it was autumn, it was time to reap the fruits. Sorry, all of you have to die. Twisting his body slightly in the air, Qinguang's back slammed into the thick wall of the World Shatterer. With a loud bang, the wall collapsed. In the next moment, he appeared in the sky above the plaza. Below him were thousands of members of the World Shatterer. There were too many species, and their types were too complicated. In any case, when Meng Chao looked at them, he found that they were all over the place, and it looked like a monster paradise. Qinguang shuddered and quickly put on a serious look. However, he found that these guys seemed to be in a daze and did not move for a long time. Do what? Empty fort stratagem? Are you trying to scare me? He did not understand what was going on. That's not right. It seems that along the way, I've been killing more and more mutated monsters and absorbing more and more elemental crystal cores. It seems like I'm constantly getting stronger. He was in the middle of the battle, so he didn't feel anything. However, judging from the reactions of these monsters, it seemed like they couldn't handle the aura that he was releasing. Forget it, this is also good. Let them die a more straightforward death. On the other side, the three elders saw Chen Guang's eyes narrowed. It seemed like he was about to use his ultimate move. They finally made up their minds. Let's shake the endless reincarnation will together. Let everyone wake up. Okay. Let's go all out. The three of them said in unison. Immediately, the three of them mobilized the elemental power in their bodies and formed a resonance. In the blink of an eye, a thunderous roar sounded in the hearts of all the monsters. Kill! 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 All warriors of the world-shattering holy tribe, listen up. The final moment of our holy tribe's life and death has arrived. Either we are exterminated, or we kill Right Chen. Take back the Saint Cores. The three elders transformed into their original forms and let out a resonance. As expected, the effect was outstanding. All the monsters who were in a state of confusion instantly woke up. In the next second, these monsters gritted their teeth and soared into the sky. Countless strange attacks flew toward Chen Guang, who was in midair. At the same time, the historical stone that Elder Earth had transformed into said in a deep voice, Right Chen. Do you want to kill your friends? If you don't want them to be safe and sound, you'd better surrender obediently. Chen Guang ignored the attacks of these ants and turned to look at a corner near the base. He already knew that Shui Lin and the others were down there. He chuckled. Of course I don't want them to die, but can you kill them? As soon as he finished speaking, his eyes flashed. Two energies of unknown power shot out from his pupils and pierced the ground above the dungeon where Shui Lin and the others were imprisoned. A loud rumbling sound rang out. In the next instant, the earth trembled. The huge underground prison actually broke through the ground, and the entire prison floated up from the ground, suspended in the air. The solid walls of the dungeon flickered with a glow similar to the dome that Chen Guang had set up outside. Yes, he had used the super composite power again. I'm sorry, but you can't hurt them at all. With a wave of Chen Guang's hand, the dungeon that was suspended in the air flew out and landed near the dome that was protecting Enchanting and the other two. Shui Lin and the others were completely dumbfounded. They looked at the destroyed base and thought that they were in a nightmare. Chen Guang was satisfied when he heard the notification from the Heavenly Holy Grail. Hostage rescue successful. Current number of rescued, 54. Number of rescued, 0. Number of dead hostages, 1. Remaining mission time, 18 hours 53 minutes 7 seconds. No. Impossible. The three elders of the world of destruction exclaimed in unison. How could they have expected that the hostages that they had gone through so much trouble to get would be taken away so easily? Oh right, you guys keep talking about the Holy Core. What is that? Without any worries in his heart, Chen Guang relaxed and started gossiping again. However, the one who answered him this time was not a member of the world of destruction but Azure. Do you want to know? Haven't you eaten so much already? Damn! Do they want to kill me and eat my gallstones? Azure, did you give the elemental crystal core a new name, gallstones? You might as well continue to call it fruit candy. At this moment, Chen Guang's gaze when he looked at these monsters was even weirder. Did he really think that the punishment realm had given you guys a tragic fate? But in the end, you guys wanted to kill me and dig out my heart? Uncle could tolerate it, but Aunt couldn't. 10 lands 8 wastelands black tortoise sky-flipping seal. Perhaps his naming talent was off the charts, but after Chen Guang shouted, a sun-like halo appeared above his head. This halo instantly expanded and left his head. It flew into the sky and turned into a pagoda in midair. This pagoda expanded in the sky and covered a radius of several hundred acres in an instant. Then, it pressed down from the top. The World of Destruction warriors' attacks on Chen Guang landed on the base of this pagoda. At the same time, almost 1,000 attacks blasted the pagoda. There were energy attacks and mutated monsters that had turned into weapons. Loud booms rose and fell as dazzling rays of light spread out like ripples. For a moment it was as if thousands of fireworks had bloomed in the sky. But it was all in vain. The pagoda pressed down with unstoppable momentum. Although it was slow, it was unstoppable, like a road roller pressing down on a basket full of eggs. In the end, the pagoda slammed into the three elders' bodies. The three elders' bodies continued to be pressed into the ground, and the pagoda continued pressing down until the underground prison was pressed against the ground. Just a little more and it would shatter. With a thought, Chen Guang dispersed the pagoda. At this point, most of the stone of history had sunk into the ground, and only half of the primordial star was left on the ground. The heaven-swallowing living soil had flattened itself and wasn't suppressed much. Chen Guang had only used one move, but even the hexagram array on the endless reincarnation wheel had dimmed a little. The three World of Destruction elders were overwhelmed with shock. Over 1,000 World of Destruction warriors who attacked Right Chen with their true bodies were all killed by this one move. Not a single one was left alive. As for those who had used energy attacks, they were slightly better off. They were only gravely injured and barely hanging on. The primordial star that Walter had transformed into was riddled with holes and was in a state of desolation. His voice carried a lingering fear. What exactly is this forbidden spell? Elder Earth shouted angrily. You're asking me? How would I know? Stop talking nonsense. Quickly activate the reincarnation wheel. Elder and I interrupted the two and reminded them. With a single move and a hostage in his hands, Chen Guang was in a great mood at this moment. It was so much so that he even started to feel elated. However, he soon recovered from his daze. He's still in the punishment realm. Although he had no idea what happened to cause the difficulty of his mission to drop, he still couldn't let his guard down. He had to put on a good show. He hurriedly tried to communicate with the elemental cores left behind by the World of Destruction warriors. As usual, he sensed the existence of over 500 elemental cores without much effort. He summoned them in his mind and opened his palm to wait for the harvest. What's going on? There's no movement. After waiting for a dozen seconds, not a single crystal core flew over. When he looked over, he immediately understood what was going on. It turned out that the World Shatterer warriors, who had been shattered by his pagoda and had their souls disintegrated, were recovering rapidly under the nourishment of the golden light rain falling from the six-pointed star array in the sky. Not only did they recover their bodies, but even their shattered souls were constantly being fused back together. Full health on the spot. So cool. Chen Guang looked up at the sky and then down at the ground. He carefully analyzed the golden light rain cycle between the two arrays and immediately understood. No wonder he couldn't absorb the crystal cores. These guys actually had the ability to revive in the energy-enclosed environment formed by the two arrays. This was even crazier than his own regenerative ability. Chapter 809. Ha ha ha. Do you think you've got it in your hands? Right, Chen. You're not the only one who has learned a new forbidden spell. Have a taste of my race's forbidden spell, Endless Reincarnation Wheel. You won't be able to kill any of us in this spell. Seeing that the Endless Reincarnation Wheel was effective, Earth Elder purposely shouted arrogantly. It seemed brainless, but it was actually to boost morale. At the same time, Earth Elder secretly directed his mental power towards the first secret room. Before he even got close, his mental power was suddenly devoured by an invisible force and he lost contact with it. Earth Elder nodded to himself. This meant that Sher Shah was about to succeed. Persevere a little longer and let the final weapon give the arrogant Right Chen a head-on blow. In an instant, the heavily injured or dead warriors of the World Shatterer had completely recovered. They were no different from before. For a moment, the warriors of the World Shatterer were in high spirits. They felt that they were invincible in the endless reincarnation wheel. They had an immortal body and an indestructible soul. The forbidden spell was indeed worthy of its reputation. With the support of the endless reincarnation wheel, even if Right Chen's strength made him seem like an ant trying to shake a tree, as long as he persevered, he would be able to exhaust him to death. He didn't even need to use his last drop of blood. He just needed to persevere for a little longer and wait for Sure Shah to come out. The rest would be left to him. After recovering their vitality, the World Destruction Warriors once again charged into the air like moths to a flame. This time, they gave it their all. Since they were not going to die, and they could be revived after they died, they might as well use the suicidal method of overdrafting their vitality from the very beginning. Seeing these world-shatterer monsters charging at him crazily, Chen Guang was in a dilemma. Previously, he had used a pagoda. What should he use this time? In any case, I'm a famous Grand Magister now. If I use the same trick over and over again, won't it damage my noble image? What's going on? You're still thinking of tricks? Azure, who had been watching the show, couldn't hold it in anymore and cursed. Chen Guang nodded seriously. Of course. A Grand Sorcerer has to have the dignity of a Grand Sorcerer. Speaking of which, it's my fault. Most of the novels I read in the past were mainly about the cities. I'm not very familiar with Xuanhuan or Western fantasy. Earth roar. Suddenly, he had an idea. With another wave of his hand, countless wooden oxen and mud horses appeared behind him and charged forward. When they encountered the warriors of the World Shatterer who were in midair, the wooden oxen and mud horses also leaped up and collided with the warriors of the World Shatterer in midair. The effect of this move was even more obvious. After it was executed, the thousands of World Shatterer warriors were heavily injured again. They fell to the ground like a meteor shower and shattered completely again. Luli, are you sure this isn't a move from the Legend of the Three Kingdoms? Are you going to use useless heaven and earth next time? Chen Guang silently shook his head. It's fine if heaven and earth are useless. After all, I'm only an Earth Grand Magus. I don't cultivate both lightning and earth. There's no use in the world, but there's the 8 trigrams. I can't imitate it. Please, be a little more serious, okay? No matter how Luli complained in his heart, Enchanting, Xuelin, and the others who had been protected by the dome and the underground prison were shocked speechless by his unprecedented fighting style. If they didn't know that he was Chen Guang, if they didn't know that they were just ordinary earthlings, they would have thought that they had accidentally entered a fantasy novel. Ambush formation. It was the familiar move from the Legend of the Three Kingdoms again. As he shouted, countless stone soldiers holding spears, swords, and shields and riding stone horses emerged from the ground. These stone soldiers didn't have real lives or souls. They were just human forms formed by Chen Guang's manipulation of the elemental power. They were like real creatures with the ability to move. They didn't have consciousness or souls. They only had one thought, which was to follow the summoner's will and destroy everything that the summoner wanted to destroy. Their bodies were made of ordinary soil. However, after Chen Guang bestowed the earth elemental power, the soil would either harden and become as hard as iron, or become a semi-solid gelatinous substance that possessed great explosive power and elasticity. In the next moment, the group of stone soldiers and the 1,000 undying warriors of the World Breaker clashed. For a moment, the sky was filled with battle cries as both sides fought fiercely. The warriors of the World Breaker had an undying body and soul, but Chen Guang's ambush formation didn't have any life. Both sides suddenly entered a state of stalemate. Seeing this, Chen Guang thought that it wasn't a good idea to continue like this. Although the old man was a marmalade exploder and had almost endless elemental power, it wasn't a good idea to always be stalled by these weaklings. I have to make a big move. Did you hear clearly what the chief shouted just now? Xuelin leaned against the iron door of the dungeon, her hands grabbing onto the iron bars that had been strengthened to the point of being indestructible. Her face was filled with confusion as she muttered. Beside her, a young special agent from the Guangding General Headquarters, who was also a former special agent from the Security Bureau, said doubtfully, Earth Howl and ambush formation? It sounds familiar. Xuelin patted her head. Did I encounter too many strange things today that my brain is muddled? Maybe, probably, not. The young man didn't know how to answer. Then, you mean that the chief is using a trick from the game? Leader, you must have heard wrongly. The director is invincible throughout the ages. How could he use the tricks in the game like a child's play? Shui Lin nodded. That must be the case. Let's just listen. On the other side, Liuli couldn't stand it anymore. It wasn't that she thought he might go overboard. In fact, Liuli also knew that no matter how Qinguang played, it didn't matter. In a sense, he had already completed this punishment realm. However, you are the savior of the heavenly Holy Grail, and now you have become the Earth Howl Exploder in the Endless God Realm, whose rank is not much different from that of a God Emperor. Playing like this is really damaging to the dignity of the God Realm. I'm warning you. If you dare to use the trick from the legend of the heroes of the Three Kingdoms again, I will definitely let you go to the punishment realm of the Anal King Cup next time. And it's in the One-Line Heavens realm. Big sister, I was wrong. Don't mess around. I'll use my trump card right now and steam those 3 old monsters. This formation of theirs is quite powerful. They turned this part of the world into a closed space. No matter how I kill these low-level monsters, their souls and energy are firmly locked in this closed space. If I don't destroy the formation, I really won't be able to kill them. Liuli nodded. It's good that you can see through it yourself. I was worried that you really needed me to remind you. Seeing that he was serious, Liuli didn't complain anymore. After all, this guy looked quite serious. Dear Mingguo tried to beat around the bush. I think he still has some tricks up his sleeve. Liuli didn't believe it. That's impossible, right? On the other side, Qinguang suddenly raised his hands high as if he was worshipping a god. 2 extremely thick earth elemental forces that he deliberately created gushed out from his palms and soared into the sky. They combined into one in the sky and condensed into a ball of air. It spun wildly in the air and became bigger and bigger. In an instant, it expanded to a diameter of more than 200 feet. This was indeed a big move. The momentum of its appearance was scary enough. Liuli turned to dear Mingguo and said proudly, "See, I told you that he is very imposing when he is serious." Yes, yes, yes. Your Qinguang is the most powerful. On the other side, Qinguang opened his eyes. The ball in the air suddenly exploded. A giant figure made of greenish-black rocks suddenly appeared in the air and smashed toward the ground. Appear. Obelisk's giant god warrior. Liuli was furious. And I'm the sky dragon of Osiris. On the other side, Shui Lin had seen this old anime before. The male lead was called Mudo Ran, no, Mudo Games. The title of the anime was Yu-Gi-Oh! She also stared and muttered, "What the hell? And I'm the winged dragon of the sun god." The young man next to her didn't understand. "Leader, what's that?" Shui Lin covered her face. The 3 phantasmal gods from the anime Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! The young man said that it sounded familiar. Then the question was, what kind of world was this? As a loyal LOL player, apart from racing and games, Luffy used to be a skilled 2D beautiful girl warrior. She had already explained the power of the 3 phantasmal gods and 3 phantasmal demons to Xian Qin and Wu Miaowan, 2 completely confused Lolita deputy directors. On the other side, on Qinguang's side, the huge dark green giant that he had summoned smashed into the ground, crushing dozens of world-shatter monsters to death. At the same time, it also crushed a bunch of stoneman soldiers that had been summoned by the ambush squad. The giant god warrior slowly straightened its body. Its incomparably strong shoulders were about 10 feet wide, and its body made of dark green rocks was emitting a faint green light. The extremely strong rock muscles made the giant god warrior seem indestructible. The shoulder armor and back that were full of sharp thorns added an even more ferocious and tyrannical aura. The giant god warrior looked around, then looked up to the sky and roared. A dinosaur-like scream came from its mouth, as if it was declaring its sovereignty. Qinguang was very satisfied with his work. He had spent a little more time just now to recall the image of the giant god warrior that had left a deep impression on him in this anime. The result of the finished product was very perfect. It must be out of print in the world of figurines. Not only can my huge figurine move, but it can also fight. After the scream, the giant god warrior bent down and waved its arm. With a horizontal sweep, be it the world shatterer monsters or Chen Guang's own stoneman soldiers, they were all crushed upon contact and destroyed upon contact. The expressions of the three elders of the world shatterer changed. This was only an earth elemental summon that Right Chen had summoned, but why was it like the dome from before? It gave off a profound and unfathomable feeling, as if there was a hidden world within. However, it was also different from the dome. The aura from the dome felt like an endless abyss, but it also contained boundless vitality. It was both the end and the beginning of the earth elemental. But no matter where this giant named Obelisk stood, the aura that surged out of its body only made people feel that it was destruction, the end of all things in the world. However, they didn't have much time to analyze the difference in strength between the two sides. In the blink of an eye, the giant god warrior had already rushed in front of the primordial star that Walter had transformed into. The giant god warrior bent down and hugged the planet with both arms. With a loud roar, the primordial star was pulled out of the ground in the next instant. The giant god warrior hugged the huge sphere and raised it high above its head. It looked very much like the World Cup Champions World Cup. Elder Earth, Elder and I, save me. Walter screamed, and the planet that he had transformed into began to tremble violently. It wasn't that he was struggling, but that he had lost control of his body purely due to extreme fear. Chapter 8:10. The giant god warrior gradually increased the strength of its embrace around the primordial star. Cracks gradually appeared on the already battered planet, and streaks of dark red light seeped out of the cracks. It was unknown whether it was blood or magma. On the other side, Elder Earth and Elder Ni's true bodies saw that the situation was far from good, and they soared into the air in an attempt to save Wang Zhong. The cone-shaped stone of history changed its angle in the air and aimed its tip at the giant soldier god. Then, it flew over with a loud rumble and crashed into the giant soldier god with a heavy sense of history. As for the heaven-devouring living soil that could change its shape freely, it transformed into a large net and spun in the air towards the giant soldier god. It wasn't just the two of them. The other world-shattering monsters that were fighting Chen Guang's stone soldiers also put down their opponents. Even if they were to be beheaded or stabbed in the heart, they all turned around to save Ward. The endless reincarnation will needed the three elders to control it together. If Ward died first, the formation would collapse, and the others would die without a doubt. As long as they could save Ward, they could be revived even if they died. Whether it was for themselves or for their entire race, the world-shattering monsters knew what was important. In fact, if they had known earlier that Chen Guang was so powerful, the three elders would have thought of more ways to protect themselves even if they still used the endless reincarnation wheel. They would have even set up another defensive magic formation underground. They wouldn't have exposed their true bodies so openly. Who would have thought that this guy would be able to lift Ward, who was not weak, like a ball just by summoning a giant divine weapon of Obelisk? But Ward did not have the slightest ability to resist. In an instant, the stone of history that Elder Earth had transformed into crashed into the giant soldier god's chest. The giant net formed by Elder Ni's heaven-devouring living soil pounced onto the giant soldier god's back like an octopus, and swept up its torso as if it had eyes of its own. It seemed that Elder Ni was planning on sticking to the giant soldier god's arms and forcefully tearing them apart, which were determined to crush the primordial star. As for the attacks of the other world-shattering monsters, most of them landed on the giant god warriors in 2s and 3s. Sparks flew and dust rose, but it was actually useless. Originally, the ordinary soldiers of Worldbreaker shouldn't have been so weak. However, the 9 captains, World 1 to World 9, had all died at Chen Guang's hands. Although World 11 to World 100 were considered captains, their true strength was far inferior to the 9 captains. In addition, the damned titled warriors were stronger than the 9 captains. However, in order to completely activate the world-shattering Holy Tribe's ultimate weapon, the World Sand, 17 of the 18 had died and 1 survived. If it weren't for the fact that Qin Guang could roughly see the memory fragments of the world-shattering Holy Tribe's warriors each time he killed and the conflicts between him and the world-shattering Holy Tribe, Qin Guang was certain that there wasn't a single good person in this vicious assassin organization. Every so-called monster was actually an assassin who had more or less killed many people. Qin Guang almost sympathized with these people. Forget it, it's time to put an end to them. In their worldview created by the punishment realm, he had become a thief who had stolen their sacred cores. It was ridiculous, and he felt even more uncomfortable. To be honest, although the attacks of the others were useless, the desperate charge of the 2 great elders, as well as Walter's frantic struggle when his desire to live erupted, really caused some trouble for the insufferably arrogant giant god. The collision with the stone of history caused it to stagger a step back. The giant net formed by the heaven-devouring living soil also caused a lot of trouble for its arms, greatly reducing its pressure on the primordial star. Unfortunately, the giant god warrior was ultimately a killing weapon personally made by the Marmalade Bomber. It was born for destruction, and the level suppression made the world-shatterer Holy Tribe members feel despair. Although it had no soul or emotions, the natural dignity of a high-ranked elemental creature was innately accompanied by the elemental power in its body. After being provoked by these lowly creatures in all sorts of ways, it exploded on its own without Qin Guang's orders. After regaining its footing, a strange magical formation that even Qin Guang couldn't understand appeared beneath the giant god warrior's feet, becoming a formation within the endless reincarnation wheel. Qin Guang watched with great interest. It seemed that he still had many areas to explore and learn about the path of the earth element. Although his level was high enough, he still had to learn how to use the earth element. He wasn't wrong. Although his level was extremely high, he had never tried to figure out how to use the earth element. He was purely relying on his instincts and imagination, and had never systematically learned how to use elemental power. To put it simply, the more daring one was, the more productive one was. To put it more simply, he was like a 3-year-old child holding a piece of plasticine, and the child could mold it into whatever shape he wanted. No matter what he molded, the plasticine was actually a C4 explosive, which could easily kill dozens or even hundreds of adult men if thrown into a crowd. That was pretty much it. He had a heavy weapon in his hand, and he could unleash the power of the heavy weapon, but it was really impossible for him to use it more intricately. Qin Guang was satisfied with the composite dome, the earth fury, the ambush formation, and even this giant god warrior. But in Lu Li's eyes, it was an extremely crude and primitive way of using elemental power. To put it simply, it was child's play. But he was still inexperienced, after all. It was already not bad that he could achieve this in such a short period of time. At the very least, it showed that he was very talented and smart. Just like the current giant god warrior. Although its power was unbelievably weak when compared to the endless divine realm, its level was actually quite high. As soon as the array beneath the giant soldier god's feet appeared, a shadow appeared out of thin air on its already extremely thick arms. This shadow spread from its fists all the way down, covering its entire body in an instant. It was a full-body armor. Qin Guang rolled his eyes. If it weren't for the spikes on the guy's shoulders and back that ruined the image, the armor on this guy was clearly the Western-style armor that had left a painful memory for him. Yes, that's right. It was a sunny, no, a lonely and ruthless night. He was almost caught by Deputy Director Han in Teacher Zhuo's office. In the end, he hid in the former counselor's armor and luckily escaped the disaster, but he was almost suffocated to death. According to Lu Li, everything in the punishment realm was inextricably linked to the thoughts in the depths of his soul. He never expected that the night when he saw the void being refreshed would leave such a deep impression on him. On the other side, the moment the shadow of the armor of the giant god warrior appeared, it broke free from the giant net made of the heaven-swallowing living soil. The stone of history crashed into it again, but it could not shake the giant god warrior at all. As for the other ant-like monsters, they became insignificant ants scratching an itch on the body of the giant beast. The mysterious array below the colossus' feet granted the shadow of the armor, which seemed to carry a mysterious enhancement effect. Just like in the game, the strength and the defense ability of the colossus had been significantly improved. The cracks on the primordial star increased rapidly again. Elder Ward's life was hanging by a thread. At this moment, the ground shook, and an 8-story building not far from the giant god warrior exploded. A figure no different from an average person rose from the smoke and dust. Ward immediately felt the force that was about to crush him lighten. He turned his thoughts and saw the world's sand floating in the air, shrouded in mist. He cried out in ecstasy. "You're finally out. I'm saved." Chen Guang turned to look at the young man who suddenly appeared. He raised his brows and thought to himself, the saying that villains die because they talk too much seems to be an unchanging truth. In this realm of punishment, he had accidentally put himself in the role of a villain and said a few more words of nonsense. After summoning Obelisk's giant soldier god, he, as the strongest combat power, was obsessed with new moves and watching the giant soldier god show off. He did not expect that they actually had a trump card. It seems like they've been stalling for time. This young man does have some skills. In terms of power, this young man seemed to be on par with the destroyer he met previously, but his realm felt very similar to that of a chaos being. But this is not enough. Far from enough. If I didn't become a marmalade exploder, I might really be defeated by this young man. As for now, saying it will only make you feel more despair. It's a pity that you can't even defeat my little brother. Even the real Earth Chaos being was cursed to death by the old man's protagonist Halo. What makes you think you can fight with me? The 3 elders of the World Destruction Guild were completely unaware. They felt that they finally had the chance to turn the tables. They were moved to tears. All the hard work was worth it. First, they used hundreds of years to adjust the elemental attributes of the newly born lives in the clan, hoping to cultivate the ultimate weapon with unlimited devouring ability. They finally succeeded 20 years ago. Then, they spent another 20 years to find the other 17 so-called titled warriors who were most compatible with the world's sand. In fact, it was just to fuse the power of these 18 people into the world's sand, completely activating his ability and obtaining the ultimate weapon. Now, it seemed that all the hard work was worth it. This was simply a perfect creation. There's hope for the revival of our holy clan. With this perfect ultimate weapon, what's there to be afraid of? The 3 elders of the World Destruction Guild couldn't be blamed for being frogs at the bottom of a well. In the hearts of ants, there seemed to be no difference between an elephant and a blue whale. Anyway, to them, they were all equally big and boundless. The world sand first looked at the giant god warrior, then turned his gaze to Chen Guang who was hovering in midair. Unlike other frogs at the bottom of a well, as a frog standing outside the well, he could understand the gap between him and the other party. Chapter 8:11. Not to mention the so-called thief, Right Chin, he wasn't even a match for the tall stone monster below. However, in his memory, this person wasn't called Right Chin. He was called Chen Guang. He wasn't a thief who stole the holy core, nor was he a great wizard of the Dolua world. He was the same as himself and everyone else here, a mortal. But why was he able to use such magic? Also, was the power in my body real or fake? If my power was real, then his magic should be real as well. If my power was fake, then his power should be fake too. But why was he able to kill the others so easily? Just how high was his level? What do I have to do to make him stop? Why must he be enemies with us, and why must we be enemies with him? What kind of irresolvable conflict is there between him and the world of destruction? Ever since he became sensible, this was the first time Sher Shah felt regret in his heart. He regretted never asking about the organization's matters in the past. He didn't know what enemies the organization had, and he couldn't understand why Huaxia would suddenly go to war with the world of destruction and send over a hunting team of over 50 people. Why was this young man called Qinguang here? Although he had become the ultimate weapon that the world of destruction holy tribe had high hopes for, Shi Sha's perplexity didn't lessen at all. Instead, it increased. He even started to think hard about how to make this man called Qinguang leave this place. It didn't matter even if he took his companions with him. If I know the cause and effect of this matter, I can probably think of a way to calm him down and have a good talk, right? Why did they have to kill each other? Any misunderstandings and conflicts can be resolved through communication. Shi Sha. Why are you still in a daze? Hurry up and do it. Walter suppressed his ecstasy when he saw that Shi Sha didn't save him immediately after coming out. He shouted desperately in his heart. On the other side, the giant god warrior continued to compress the primordial star after a short pause. If there was life on the primordial star, the people on this pitiful planet would be witnessing a scene of the end of the world that made them despair. Of course, this was impossible. With Ward's abilities, forming the shape of a planet was already his limit. If he could nurture life, he wouldn't be a lowly earth elemental life form. There was no other way. He could only save them first. Shi Sha threw away the messy thoughts in his mind and flew towards the giant soldier god. He didn't have the guts to provoke Qinguang, who was floating in the sky. He could understand Qinguang's current state of being a cat toying with a mouse. He knew that as long as Qinguang was willing, everything would be over in an instant. As the world sand approached, the giant god warrior's pressure on the primordial star grew weaker. There was no other reason other than the fact that the ultimate weapon, the world sand, had restrained the power of the giant god soldier. Lad, if this is all you've got, it's not enough. Qinguang didn't panic at all. Instead, he hoped that this person could stimulate more of the giant god soldier's potential. That way, he would be able to see more ways to use the earth element from the giant god soldier's counterattack. For example, the formation within a formation under its feet was very interesting. As a Grand Magus, it was embarrassing to learn how to use elemental power from his own summoned creature. Finally, the giant god soldier was obstructed again and again. Even though it didn't have any emotions, its dignity as a high-level creature was being belittled, and it subconsciously retaliated with more power. Chance. Run. Ward was overjoyed when he saw that the giant god warrior's attention was temporarily diverted. The side of the primordial star that was facing the giant god warrior spewed out boiling red magma in unison. It looked like an active volcano eruption during the destruction of a planet. Although the magma couldn't break through the giant god soldier's armor, it provided a considerable recoil force for the primordial star. The world sand, who was already prepared for battle, took the opportunity to speed up, and his body exploded. His body suddenly disappeared and turned into a cloud of yellow dust that filled the sky. He pounced at the giant god soldier's arms. In the blink of an eye, the giant god soldier's arms were covered in a thick layer of yellow sand. It looked like armor, but it was actually formed from the world sand's body. Not only did it not provide any protection, but it also forcefully absorbed the power from the giant god soldier's arms, solidifying them and restricting the giant god soldier's movements. The giant god soldier roared furiously, and the formation beneath its feet became even brighter. Outside the formation's boundary, a circle of complicated veined patterns that even Qinguang couldn't understand appeared. This increased the diameter of the formation within the formation by another half. Accompanied by the sound of cracking, cracks first appeared on the binding armor that the world sand had transformed into. Then, it shattered with a loud bang. Like an exploding vase, it turned into countless fragments that scattered in all directions. The giant soldier god broke free from the binding again. However, the primordial star had already taken advantage of this delay and shot out like a missile with the recoil force of a volcanic eruption. Once Walter escaped, Elder Earth's Stone of History and Elder Ni's heaven-devouring living soil hurriedly left the battle. As long as they didn't die and the endless reincarnation will wasn't broken, the others could be revived after death. The world-shattering Saint tribe would be invincible. The giant god soldier lifted its leg to give chase, but the world's sand that had exploded into fragments disintegrated into dust in midair. Then, it pounced at its legs and condensed into a pair of shackles. It was strange. The world sand's true size was no different from an ordinary person, but after disintegrating into dust, the weight of the sand was much larger than a human's. The feet of the giant god were blocked, and it staggered a little. When it shattered the shackles again, the three elders had already fled far away. No one knew what they did, but after they escaped, they smashed the ground together and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. With a thought, Chen Guang grasped the three's escape route. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They thought that he wouldn't be able to do anything if they hid underground. How stupid. Forget it, it's time to end this. Chen Guang gave an order to the Colossus in his heart. Kill everyone here and get out of here. It was evident that the summoned creature couldn't understand a single word Chen Guang said, but it could understand its owner's impatience. It immediately responded by turning around and sprinting towards the hiding spot of the primordial star that Walter had transformed into. The world sand wrapped around his feet again, but this time it was broken off even faster. No one knew what the Colossus god used, but with every step it took, a six-pointed star formation would appear where its feet touched the ground. The Colossus god was getting closer and closer to Walter. The world sand's figure gradually appeared, and he looked at the approaching giant in despair. He had already tried his best. However, the disparity between their strengths was too great, and he couldn't absorb the earth elemental power of this stone giant at all. Even if he used all his strength, it was all in vain. Even if he could occasionally obtain some power from the other party was an endless and bottomless pit. Everything was futile. Sher Shah looked up in despair. It was just a summoned creature, and it already made him feel so powerless. How strong was Right Chin himself? The ultimate weapon, who was regarded as the last hope of the world-shattering holy tribe, actually felt no different from the others in despair. If he could, he wanted to fly up to the sky and stand in front of Right Chin. He wanted to tell him what he had said to the others earlier. He wanted to tell him that he had been tricked too, that he was not a magician, and that this was all an illusion. We are all humans. Unfortunately, Obelisk's giant divine weapon did not give him the slightest chance to catch his breath. If Patriarch Ward died and the array was broken, in the next moment, none of the clansmen who had been attacking the bluestone giant in vain from beginning to end would survive. This was so painful. He indeed didn't have deep feelings for these killers in the world-shattering holy tribe. But after all, many of them had grown up with him. Although he wasn't on good terms with many of them, they were still his partners. If he could, he really didn't want to lose a so-called partner, even if he didn't approve of these people's lifestyle and motives as killers. The world sand knew that perhaps he shouldn't be so indecisive, but he had no choice. There's no other way. I can only fight like this, right? The world sand clenched his teeth, and his whole body exploded again. But this time, he didn't attack the Colossus god like a moth flying into a flame. Instead, he turned into smoke and dust that scattered to the ground. The boundless yellow sand spread out in all directions with him as the center, and the sky seemed to be covered in a thick fog. In the next moment, the yellow sand fell to the ground again, and the ground began to undulate like the waves of the sea. Then, it gathered together again, and a giant that was even bigger than the Colossus god rose from the ground and blocked in front of the Colossus god. Qin Guang raised his eyebrows. Previously, you had been fighting against my Colossus god in the form of sand, and I couldn't find your body and crystal core even after several counterattacks. Now that you took the initiative to condense into a form, you're just seeking your own death. Facing this even bigger giant, the Colossus god didn't dodge or avoid. It waved its fist, and on the tip of the fist, a disc-shaped formation with a diameter of about 6 meters appeared, glowing with a golden glow. With a loud bang, the fist of the Colossus god hit the chest of the mud giant that was transformed by the world sand. Qin Guang, who had been playing tricks in the sky, suddenly flicked his finger. A ray of black light shot out from his fingertip and hit the head of the mud giant. After being hit by 2 attacks, the mud giant first stiffened, and then it suddenly disintegrated. The Colossus god pulled its hands to the sides and completely disintegrated. It lifted its leg and stepped through the disintegrated body of the mud giant. It didn't slow down and continued to charge towards where Walter was hiding. As for Chen Guang, he was looking at the light red crystal core floating in midair. Was this the ultimate weapon of the world-shattering Saint tribe? It was still so weak. Sigh, I thought it could cause me some trouble. However, he didn't gain nothing from this period of dawdling. At least, the punch that the Colossus god threw just now allowed him to understand another way to use the earth element. The magic formation on the fist of the Colossus god represented an extremely strong vibration. The moment the mud giant was hit, the vibration spread throughout its entire body and completely disintegrated. That was why the destroyer ability that he used during the last hit was able to succeed so easily. This ability was a bit like the tremor fruit, Gura Gura no Mi, of the white beard in One Piece. As expected, the elemental path was broad and profound. As long as one found the appropriate way to use it, one would be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort in battle. Damn! What the hell? He recovered so quickly. Suddenly, his pupils constricted. The originally dead world-shattering sand actually turned into a huge mud giant again and stood in front of the Colossus god. Looking at this obviously much weaker but still unyielding mud giant, Chen Guang felt a headache coming on. It wasn't that he couldn't deal with this guy. It was purely because in comparison, this so-called strongest warrior of the world-shattering Saint tribe was more like an unkillable main character in novels and mangas. He had a firm belief. In order to protect his race, he didn't hesitate to use his last drop of blood. Even if he was smashed into pieces, he wouldn't hesitate. He was smashed again and again. Even though he knew that the difference in strength between the two of them was so great that willpower couldn't make up for the difference, he still wouldn't give up. Damn, this guy is the male lead. His villainous setting was becoming more and more ingrained under the brilliant image of the other party. This isn't logical. I'm clearly here to exterminate the bandits. I represent justice. Don't even think of shaking my willpower. You're all murderous killers. All of you have to die. Chapter 8:12. This was too much torture for him. The endless reincarnation will seem to have its limits. For example, the strength of the final weapon lad had declined to a certain extent, and he couldn't maintain the same strength as the others. However, Chen Guang wasn't sure what the limits of the endless reincarnation will were. In any case, according to the Holy Grail's mission, he had to kill all the members of the world of destruction. Therefore, regardless of whether this final weapon lad was a good or bad person, he was a member of the world of destruction and had to die. The giant soldier god tore him apart once again and took a few more steps forward. The primordial star used a method similar to the Earth escape technique to escape into the distance. As for Elder 2 and Elder Ni, although they were extremely worried for Ward, they knew that they would not be able to pose a threat to the Bluestone giant no matter what they did. The two of them could only express that they wanted to help, but were powerless to do so. They prayed in their hearts that the world of sand could display the strength of the final weapon and make this monster stop being so arrogant. That was probably the limit of what they could do now. Apart from that, the two elders ordered every member of the World of Shattering Saint clan not to retreat no matter what and to help the World of Sand stop the Bluestone giant. However, after about a minute, their struggles were ultimately futile. Lioli silently looked at the second and third Bluestone giant beasts that appeared after Obelisk's giant soldier god and covered her face awkwardly. This guy, he actually summoned the sky dragon of Osiris and the winged dragon god of the sun god. If it wasn't for the fact that this old lady was very knowledgeable and had a photographic memory, that she had heard people mention it when she was roaming the Sword Tower Circle as Jiang Luhua, and that she had glanced at this anime when she had nothing better to do after watching the web drama, she would really have thought that you could create such a cool and overbearing elemental summoning method like the three phantasmal gods. Alright, from a certain standpoint, you're indeed progressing at a godly speed. You're using the memories in your mind to forcefully bring out the ability of the Earth Paste Exploder in a way that's almost like a lucky draw. What a shortcut. For example, the giant soldier god, which had no consciousness of its own, could still rely on instinct to display many elemental manipulation methods that even Chen Guang couldn't understand. If the sky dragon and winged dragon god of the three Egyptian gods were as good as the giant divine weapon, shouldn't Chen Guang be praised as a genius? In addition, he had summoned the three Egyptian gods, so it wasn't embarrassing. He should thank the heavens that he didn't summon Big Head's son, Little Head's father, and Uncle Wang next door. But for him, who had yet to cross the threshold, this was the best way to quickly unleash his combat strength. It was completely possible that he could summon the Earth Elemental Gundam Z next time. For a moment, Liuli was confused. She didn't know whether she should praise this guy or scold him. No matter what Luli was thinking right now, in the eyes of those who were not in the know, the two big monsters in the shape of dragons that were almost the size of colossi were truly dominating and overwhelming. But when those who were in the know saw this, they almost lost the will to scold them. That, team leader Shui, although I haven't watched Yu-Gi-Oh before, I've seen my cousin and a few of his classmates play this card. I'm not too familiar with the giant soldier god and the big golden bird, but I've seen the sky dragon card before. I heard that it's one of the most commonly used divine cards by the male protagonist in the original anime. The monster that Chief Chen created is exactly the same as the sky dragon in the card. Are the other two giant soldier god and winged dragon god exactly the same? Shui Lin nodded. He really didn't want to admit it, but it was the truth. Alright, they are indeed exactly the same. Don't ask me why, I don't know what's going on either. Perhaps the creators of the anime or these card games that we watched when we were young didn't really fabricate them out of thin air. Perhaps the myths and legends that we came into contact with in the past weren't all the imaginations of the ancients. Perhaps in a world that we don't know about, these myths and legends, or even the fictional things in the anime, all really exist. It's just that the creators of those works or stories, unknowingly, have their minds unconsciously aligned with the real gods in a certain world. Shui Lin admired himself when he said this. It was reasonable, convincing, open-minded, and far-sighted. This logic was simply flawless. Apart from not being able to explain why Chief Chen suddenly became a great mage who could summon mythical beasts, everything else was so harmonious. However, Chen Guang's sky dragon and winged dragon god weren't complete. He couldn't master their unique abilities like in the original anime. To put it bluntly, he could only master the power of the earth element at the moment. In short, his winged dragon god and sky dragon were essentially no different from the giant god soldiers. It was only their appearance that was different. Oh, right, under his intentional emphasis, these two dragons could still fly. However, they didn't fly by flapping their wings. Instead, they were like a ruler controlling the earth, removing their own gravity and floating in the air. At this moment, Lu Fei was also in an awkward situation. She didn't know how to explain to Xian Qin and Wu Miaowan, who were overjoyed to see the demonic dragon from Western mythology. Who would have thought that this irresponsible great mage, Chen Guang, would actually gather the three mages from Yu-Gi-Oh! How many crispy noodle snacks did you eat when you were a kid playing card phones? You must have a grudge against card collecting. As for whether Right Chen's identity as a great mage was real or not. Was it possible that the great mage's magic could really summon the three mages? Lu Fei said, I don't care if others believe it or not, I'll pretend to believe it first. After the three mages appeared at the same time, Shi Sha, who was already in extreme despair, felt downright depressed. He was shredded by the giant god soldiers again, but on the other side, the sky dragon and winged dragon god were pouncing in the direction of the great elder and the second elder. The three great elders, who represented the highest echelons of the shattered holy clan, fled frantically into the distance like stray dogs. At this moment, they didn't dare to hope for the sacred core anymore. Even surviving was an extravagant hope. These people who had their memories fabricated by the punishment realm would never understand why Right Chen's power was so strong. He was even stronger than the elemental controller who had sealed the Holy Clan in this place according to the records. This didn't make sense at all. He had a power that didn't belong to this world at all. Sher Shah's body was reforged once again. However, this time, he didn't turn into the image of a mud giant like before. Instead, he returned to his normal human form and floated in the air in despair. He looked at the backs of the giant god soldiers, then turned to look at the backs of the sky dragon and winged dragon god. He was completely at a loss. He felt so powerless. He couldn't save anyone, he couldn't stop anyone, and he couldn't change anything. He had never been willing to kill people. However, before he killed his teacher, his hands had already stained more than 100 lives. He was different from the others. He had never carried out a mission, never left the training base, and never killed anyone outside the base. However, even those who died in his hands and were thrown into the dungeon with him, who knew if every single one of them deserved to die? Who knew if those people had lost their families and were thinking of them from afar? Today, he told the so-called shattered Holy Clan that they were all living in a pitiful lie. He wanted to wake them up and hope that they wouldn't commit suicide. However, no one believed in him. They believed in their memories even more. In their eyes, he was a coward who only knew how to run away. Perhaps he was also a lunatic. If he wasn't the only candidate, they would definitely give up on him and choose someone else without hesitation. Now, he had finally become the so-called ultimate weapon. Perhaps the blood of the world blade flowed in his body, or perhaps his soul resided in it. He finally made up his mind to protect this so-called shattered Holy Clan no matter what. If there was a chance, he also wanted to have a good talk with Chen Guang or the person called Right Chen. However, he still couldn't do anything until now. That person in the sky was too arrogant, and his summoned creatures were too powerful. He didn't even have a moment to breathe. Judging from his appearance, he didn't seem to be interested in talking to him on equal footing. In his eyes, people like him were like ants. In the distance, the 3 Egyptian gods had already pounced at the 3 elders' hiding spots. The giant soldier god stomped on the ground, and 2 dark green hexagram formations appeared under his feet once again. The primordial star was forcefully shaken out, and the giant soldier god gripped it tightly once more. The sky dragon landed on the ground and opened its mouth. White light flashed in its mouth that was full of fangs, and an extremely thick white beam of light shot out from its mouth. There was also a mysterious magic circle at the location where the beam of light came out from. Through the transformation of the magical formation, the earth elemental energy shot out from the sky dragon's mouth became the power of thunder. Chen Guang was shocked. It's here. Superconducting electric wave lightning cannon. One really wouldn't know without trying. The bolder a person was, the more productive he was. Although he didn't know how the sky dragon did it, it had definitely converted the earth elemental energy into thunder. The ground that was bombarded by the superconducting electric wave lightning cannon rapidly cracked open, and rays of white light emerged from the ground. The Great Elder's historical stone couldn't stay there any longer. He emerged from the ground in a sorry state and was about to escape when the sky dragon pounced on him with its wings spread open, and its claws pressed down on this large rock. The sky dragon's lightning cannon didn't stop, and it poured down on the historical stone like a waterfall. Chen Guang felt his hair stand on end, and he couldn't help but sympathize with the Great Elder. I don't know what you think, but I definitely wouldn't be able to endure being spat like a faucet. Alright, the other brother was in an even worse state. The winged divine dragon was the strongest existence among the 3 illusory gods, and it was spitting out golden flames. Elder Ni's mighty and tyrannical heaven-devouring living soil was currently trapped in a golden hexagram formation and couldn't break free. The winged divine dragon's golden flames were madly burning his body. This miserable scene reminded Chen Guang of the scene he had seen when he was a child in a small workshop. Of course, it wouldn't be wrong to call that lump of mud a brick if it was squared off. The 3 elders' miserable screams rang out one after another. The other monsters of the world-shattering holy tribe split into 3 groups and launched a suicidal attack on the 3 illusory gods. Extreme despair emerged in the hearts of every member of the world-shattering holy tribe. Chapter 8:13. No. Don't. Sher Shah woke up from her momentary daze and saw the 3 elders struggling in vain before their deaths. With a loud boom, the primordial star was finally crushed by the giant divine soldier's arm and exploded. The giant divine soldier exerted strength in its arms and tossed the exploding primordial star into the sky. This round ball became the largest firework in history, exploding into a rain of fire and meteors. The dark green stone of history was poured down by the sky dragon's lightning power. Starting from the tip of the awl, it slowly turned into powder and quicksand. The huge green stone filled with the vicissitudes of history was shaved off bit by bit like a weathered rock worn down by time. Finally, the light from the lightning cannon dimmed, and only a pile of sand from the stone of history was left on the ground. It looked like a huge graveyard. The heaven-swallowing living soil struggled and twisted in the flames. Gradually, it stopped moving. Just as Chen Guang had imagined, it was burned into a piece of tile. The winged dragon god retracted its flames, lifted its golden dragon claw, and stomped on the tile, shattering it. The 2 huge endless reincarnation wheels magic formations in the sky and on the ground trembled violently due to the death of the 3 formation eyes. They flickered and were no longer stable. Cracks appeared in the natural system of the endless reincarnation wheel's magic formation. The golden rain of light and dense mist that had been rotating between heaven and earth suddenly paused. The world-shatter monsters that had been dying and resurrecting while attempting to break through the 3 Egyptian gods didn't resurrect as quickly as before. Although they still showed signs of resurrection, their bodies were stuck halfway through their resurrection process and couldn't continue. These monsters that were on the brink of death struggled painfully on the ground. Their forms were distorted, and it was unbearable to look at them. Chen Guang took a deep breath. It was time to end everything. Regardless of their identities as members of the world-shattering holy tribe, their past assassins, their sorrowful mission targets, or the repeated provocation of Huaxia by this former terrorist organization, they had to die. Chen Guang extended his right palm. What surged in his palm was the purest earth element power of the great earth explosion. With his palm facing the sky, the ball-shaped earth elemental energy soared into the sky, growing larger and larger in the air before smashing heavily into the 6-pointed star array in the sky. He flipped his right palm again, and the second earth elemental power of the marmalade bomb appeared. This round ball fell to the ground like a nuclear bomb. In the sky, thunder exploded, and the hexagram star array exploded. Even the clouds in the sky dispersed. Looking up, one could only see the deep blue sky, and behind the blue was the endless universe. On the ground, a mushroom cloud rose from the massive tremors. Waves of smoke and dust rose into the air, destroying everything in its path, including the magic arrays on the ground. The deafening noise made everyone's ears buzz. If it weren't for the dome and the dungeon specially reinforced by Chen Guang to protect Enchanting, Xuelin, and the others, they might have really killed their own people as Lu Li had said before. When the tremors gradually subsided and the smoke and dust slowly dispersed, the originally lush Beryl mountain range had become desolate as far as the eye could see. Although it wasn't a scene of devastation, it was still barren. Only the yellow mountain range and the desolate land remained. Not even a blade of grass was left. Ouyang Tianxing, who had been hiding underground, was shivering. Chen Guang's attack had finally destroyed the last surveillance camera. All the surveillance screens in front of him had turned into white snowflakes. However, his mind was filled with Chen Guang's destructive attack. He couldn't get over it for a long time. People said that he could destroy the sky with a flip of his hand and shake the earth with a flip of his palm. How could a human be so powerful? How did Chen Guang do it? He was definitely not a world breaker, but the power he displayed was far stronger than the world breaker holy tribe. It was beyond comprehension. Compared to him, the so-called world-shattering holy tribe was like a grain of light trying to compete with the sun and moon. So, the ordinary Chen Guang in my eyes is actually such a powerful person? I'm really lucky to be able to live until now. I'm also really lucky that I've never fought him face to face. Otherwise, I can't imagine how tragic my death would be. Shui Lin and the other members of the special task force from the Guangding General Headquarters also had their mouths wide open. They couldn't say a word for a long time. Enchanting held on to the edge of the dome and looked outside. She murmured, "What kind of existence is this grand sorcerer? Why do I feel that the power of his magic is not much different from a nuclear bomb?" Although she came from a martial arts sect and didn't have much contact with modern things, Enchanting was obviously someone who was very good at learning new things. Ever since she came out of seclusion, she had only been the president of the China Escort Association for a short period of time. For the rest of the time, she had been following Chen Guang around. Apart from helping Chen Guang complete his work as the deputy director of the Guangding General Headquarters, she spent most of her time surfing the internet or meditating. Of course, she knew about nuclear bombs. It was just that her energy was limited and she was a little late. Otherwise, she would have gone to university to study quantum mechanics or something. Wu Miaowan was stunned. That's so powerful. I want to learn. Enchanting turned around and glared at her. Really? He's going to he like that? Wu Miaowan didn't understand. What does he mean? He, it means he. Enchanting rolled her eyes and ignored her. On the other hand, Lu Fei wasn't the same as the other two. She wasn't bothered by Chen Guang's final attack. Instead, she was looking at the three Egyptian gods that were slowly dissipating. For some reason, she felt that something was amiss. Something was really wrong. Chen Guang slowly landed on the ground. The elemental cores of thousands of dead monsters from the World Shatterer floated up from all directions and gathered at his position. It looked as cool as the game characters in Devil May Cry absorbing the souls of monsters after killing them. The densely packed specks of light gathered in his palm and formed a huge ball of light in front of him, floating in the air. 3 of the balls of light were particularly bright. They were the elemental cores left behind by the 3 elders of the World Shatterer. Chen Guang slowly stretched out his right palm and aimed it at the ball of light. According to international practice, he was going to have a big meal again. No. I beg you. Wait. Right at this moment, a weak moan came from in front of him. Chen Guang raised his eyebrows. There was actually a survivor of the World Shatterer who was lucky enough to survive his attack. He glanced over and wasn't so surprised. It was the so-called ultimate weapon of the World Shatterer. However, this person's body had shrunk to the size of a palm. He looked like a funny clay figurine, like a clay doll made from handicrafts. This clay figurine was standing about 2 meters in front of him. If his eyes weren't playing tricks on him, he should be looking at him with a pleading expression. At this moment, Chen Guang smiled and asked, "Wait a minute. Do you think I will let them go? Moreover, they are already dead. They are completely dead. Isn't it too late for you to plead for them now?" Sher Shah was extremely weak now. Just now, Chen Guang's 2 destructive palms had destroyed the countless reincarnation wheels and killed all the monsters of the World Shatterer. As for Sher Shah himself, as the strongest warrior in the history of the World Shatterer Holy Tribe and the ultimate weapon that carried all the hopes of the World Shatterer Holy Tribe, he barely managed to survive the attack. Besides this, he couldn't do anything. He couldn't protect anyone and was severely injured. He stood in front of Chen Guang in this ridiculous state, trying to plead for Chen Guang's mercy. Unfortunately, Chen Guang didn't have the slightest bit of sympathy for the assassins of the World Shatterer. Moreover, according to the requirements of his mission, if he didn't kill all the members of the World Shatterer, he would die. How could a hunter sacrifice his sympathy for a jackal and get himself killed? Chen Guang's heartless reply left Sher Shah at a loss. That's right. They were all dead. Why should he plead for them? Although these assassins were his comrades, with the crimes they had committed, it was reasonable for them to be turned into ashes. They only had themselves to blame for ending up like this. No, I'm not pleading for mercy. I just want to tell you something. Sher Shah changed his words. Chen Guang's interest was piqued. His hands didn't stop moving. The crystal nuclei of the monsters of the world Shatterer were rapidly converted into pure energy. He absorbed them to strengthen his body. At the same time, he looked down at the little mud man. Oh. What do you think? But don't try to bargain with me. No matter what you want to tell me, I can't let you live. You have to die. Sher Shah smiled. It's okay. I don't expect to live. But I have to tell you. There's a huge secret in this world. Chen Guang's eyes lit up. He became more interested. Let's hear it. The true identity of our world Shatterer isn't these monsters that can turn into mud. We are all real living people. We are also from Earth. Not this ridiculous Dolua world. As for you, Chen Guang, although I don't know your situation, I only know that you were originally called Chen Guang. But you are definitely not some ridiculous great magister. You are just an ordinary person. Do you think you are invincible? Do you think you can sit back and relax after eliminating this so-called World Shatterer Holy Clan? Do you think you can take that so-called Earth Saint Core and become the strongest in this ridiculous Dolua world? This is ridiculous. Whether it's you, the so-called 3 sacred race Grand Elders, or my companions who committed suicide in order to turn me into your final weapon, or the World Breaker assassins who are being ground to dust by you, you've all been deceived. You are all living in a dream. Ha ha ha, you didn't expect it, right? You are actually just a chess piece in the hands of an unknown terrifying existence. You are like a toy. Even your life is fabricated by that existence. Sher Shah smiled delightedly. He was going to die anyway. He couldn't do anything. Anyway, that invincible existence that transcended the world had set one of the parts of Right Chen's life, which was to completely destroy the World Shatterer. Whether it was himself or the other people in the World Shatterer, they were just a part of Right Chen's long life. They were destined to be his stepping stones from the beginning. This realization made him feel despair. But even if he died, he had to die with value. As long as his reminder could wake Raichen up a little, make him realize that there was a big, hateful hand controlling everything like a marionette, and make him doubt this world a little, then his death would be meaningful. Chen Guang. Chapter 8:14. Damn it, although I don't know why your memory wasn't completely erased, and you still remember that you're really an assassin, and can even think that other people's memories have been tampered with, but you reminded the mastermind himself that there's another mastermind behind all of this. As the big boss of the mastermind, the old man felt slightly out of place. Alright, it's a bit of a tongue twister, but the truth is like this. You look like you can really see through the phenomenon and see the essence. You look really proud, like you're really a prophet. But I don't know why, but I just want to laugh. Big brother, the terrifying existence that you're talking about, I'm sorry, that's also the old man himself. No matter how bad it is, it's also the heavenly holy grail in the old man's hand. You look like this, your whole body is full of angles to roast, and I don't know where to start. Awkward, extremely awkward. Sher Shah saw Chen Guang's uncomfortable look as if he had eaten a fly, and thought that his words were effective, so he smiled even more relieved. Look at your stunned look, you're stunned, right? Chen Guang nodded silently. That's right, I'm stunned. You're also a very smart and powerful person, I think you should have realized something by now. Very good, in this case, I can die without regrets. Everything that happened to me from yesterday to today is too unbelievable, too dreamy. In the past, I heard my good brother, Shi Ren, talk to me about a role-playing RPG game in this world. I'm thinking, including this so-called Dolua world, and the real world outside of us, could it be a game in that invincible existence's computer, and you, Chen Guang, you're very lucky or unlucky to be the main character in the game, and the rest of us are even more unlucky to be the supporting NPCs, but no matter what, this game will be cleared one day. At that time, the game will either be stored in a corner of the computer and gradually forgotten by the owner, kept for a long time by the owner, or it might be deleted by the owner due to the limited capacity of the hard disk. Of course, the concept of my hard disk isn't the real hard disk on Earth. The more Sher Shah spoke, the more serious he became. His expression revealed a sense of transcendence, as if he had seen through the world of mortals. He was not trying to survive, but simply wanted to tell the truth of the world that he had seen to this protagonist who, in his eyes, could break the truth. Chen Guang's smile grew brighter and brighter. He felt that the conversation was very interesting, especially since he understood everything. It was really fun to watch the little clay man gnash his teeth while talking, but even his starting point was ridiculously wrong. Yes, I understand. The hard disk you mentioned is just a metaphor. If it's a god, they wouldn't be using a hard drive, but some strange container, such as a cup? Sher Shah nodded and looked up at Chen Guang. She had a look as if he was worth teaching. Water cup? That's an interesting way of putting it. Alright, whatever you think, it doesn't matter. I'm not begging for mercy by telling you all this, nor am I trying to make a final struggle. I just want to say what's in my heart. It doesn't matter whether you believe me or not. I, Sher Shah, am a good person. No matter how you see me, I'm still a good person. Even if I'm an NPC, I'm still a good NPC. My dream must be very funny to you, and it's world peace. Other than killing each other, there are countless ways to get along with each other. I hope that perhaps you, the protagonist, can break free from the control of that existence one day, and let this game of ours turn from a virtual game into a real existence. For every life, find a more merciful way to live, and don't be manipulated mercilessly by him anymore. Although this little clay man had been acting very funny, Chen Guang was a little shocked by his even funnier view of the world. This kind of words actually came out of the mouth of an assassin organization. It was as if I heard God laughing at you and me. Our conversation is 2F** king funny. What are they talking about? Wu Miaowan asked with great interest. In the distance, Enchanting and the other two were still trapped in the dome, unable to get out. Although the edge of the dome appeared to be empty, there was an invisible layer of invisible power enveloping it, preventing the impact from the outside from hurting the people inside, and the people inside could not even think about getting out. Enchanting shrugged. How would I know? Maybe the killer who shattered the world came to his senses when he was about to die. He regretted all the wrong things he had done in the past. But it doesn't make any sense. When a bad guy is about to die, he becomes a good guy. I've seen this kind of drama on TV a lot. What a joke. When the bad person repents, can the people he killed be resurrected? If an apology is useful, why do we need the police? Lu Fei also nodded. Enchanting is right. Although I'm not very clear about the situation of the shattered world, I have indeed heard about this organization. For a long time in the past, many rich people in China changed their expressions at the mention of them. I heard that they have also caused a great impact on the stability of China's domestic security. Enchanting nodded. Sister Lu Fei, you're really right. They have caused trouble for Chen Guang more than once. He deserves it. Sigh. Mr. Director, you should hurry up and run away. Enchanting yelled in Chen Guang's direction as she yelled the latter half of her sentence. On the other side, Shui Lin and the other members of the task force, including the swordmaster Xian Yuan and the beautiful woman Wu Qingming, all looked in the direction of Chen Guang with a complicated expression. They were further away, and only Shui Lin and the two sect leaders could clearly see the little doll-like person standing in front of Chen Guang. If it wasn't for Enchanting's shout, they would have almost forgotten that the young man in front of them was the current director of the Guangding General Headquarters, and also their immediate superior. At this time, Chen Guang didn't look like a person from Earth at all. He was completely like a peerless master living in a fantasy novel. His anger could shock the world and control all lives. Even though Chen Guang didn't deliberately raise his aura, the aura that belonged to the king of the earth element was involuntarily emitted from his body. Even ordinary life forms would have a lingering fear of him. Moreover, this state would continue to rise as he continued to absorb the elemental crystal cores released by the dead monsters. At this moment, his superior aura had already reached its peak. Only Enchanting and the others who had followed him since the beginning were able to adapt to it. Shui Lin and the others, even though they were watching from afar, subconsciously felt fear in their hearts. On the other side, after being reminded by Enchanting, Chen Guang also felt that he had unconsciously delayed some time for the little clay man. What you said is very interesting, and I'm also very surprised, but you should be on your way. Shi Sha didn't show any expression of fear. Instead, he looked at Chen Guang calmly, slowly opened his arms, closed his eyes, and said in a deep voice, I hope what I said can help you in any way. Chen Guang was a little unhappy. Why was this guy's reaction completely different from what he had imagined? Who wouldn't be afraid of death? But this guy was completely detached from the world and put on a look of seeking death. This made his villain setting more and more deeply rooted. This was very unscientific, and it made him very uncomfortable. Aren't you destroying the old man's sense of accomplishment when he completed the punishment realm? You lunchbox NPC, you're completely uncooperative. No, your words don't help me at all. Everything you said just now, I know better than you. The supreme existence that you said controls everything in the unseen world and fabricates all of your memories is actually me. Chen Guang still spoke too much. As he spoke, he slowly raised his right hand and stretched it forward. The power that was glowing with black light was faintly discernible on his 5 fingertips. He didn't want any more accidents. No matter how detached and calm this young man was, it couldn't change the fact that he was the core member of Broken World. Don't try to use your act of being a good person to shake my will. My mission also requires me to kill you. Either you die, or I die. There is no third choice. Shi Sha was stunned. He raised his head to look at Chen Guang, but he saw a strange smile on Chen Guang's face. His pupils grew bigger and bigger, and he slowly opened his mouth as if he wanted to scream. But he couldn't move anymore, and he couldn't speak. The power that surged out from Chen Guang's 5 fingers had completely locked him up. Good NPC? World peace? Get along well? Live mercifully? You're simply making me laugh. You're an assassin whose hands are stained with blood. I can smell the thick stench of blood from your soul. You've killed no less than any of the Broken World assassins here. You're making a fool out of me. But it's useless. You're the most cunning Broken World assassin I've ever seen. I find it inconceivable that you can retain your true memories, but this can't change the fact that you deserve to die. That's right, no matter how much Shi Sha looked like a Buddha who had an epiphany, Chen Guang would only feel that he was cunning and hateful. Die. 5 streaks of earth elemental energy stood at the peak. Even in the endless God world, they might be the purest and most profound earth elemental energy in history. Like twisting a hemp rope, he twisted it fiercely. Shi Sha smiled bitterly. Retribution. This is retribution. He didn't have the right to blame anyone. He didn't have the right to complain about the unfairness of fate. Ever since he had his memories, he had been living in this base. Regardless of whether he was willing or not, his hands were stained with blood in order to survive. Regardless of whether he was willing or not, he still lived until now by eating the money that Broken World earned by killing people. Since he grew up eating steamed buns stained with blood, the resentment of countless dead souls had also merged into his soul along with their blood. It was impossible for him to become the kind of good person that he wanted to be in this life. All his struggles were meaningless. His body that was made of quicksand didn't feel any pain, but the pressure and tearing from the depths of his soul made him feel heart-wrenching pain. His consciousness gradually blurred, and his complete soul was being stripped away bit by bit, like ice and snow being exposed to the scorching sun on a hot summer day. Chapter 8:15. Everything is over for you. If you have a next life, remember to reincarnate as a good person. In the haze, Sher Shah could vaguely hear Chen Guang's cold snort. His body had completely shattered, but he nodded in his consciousness. Yes. Thank you. If there is a next life, I want to be a truly good person. Sher Shah's voice gradually deepened. This soul that had suffered so much finally disappeared completely. Chen Guang lowered his head and looked at the exceptionally bright fruit candy in his palm. He couldn't speak for a long time. This fruit candy was about the size of a glass bead. It was bigger than all the crystal cores from before. But what really caught his attention was the drop of water beside it. This was a tear. The faraway punishment world was already gradually shattering. The clouds and the deep blue sky behind it, which he didn't know if they were real or not, turned into pieces like broken glass. The Barrel Mountain Range, which was so tall that it reached the clouds, started to collapse bit by bit. Before the rubble fell to the ground, it turned into invisible powder and then turned into the purest energy, completely dissipating without leaving a trace. This fake punishment world that was created to test him had completed its mission. It was going to disappear completely. Chen Guang didn't care about the world that was changing. He just looked at the drop of water and the crystal core in his palm blankly. He took a deep breath. Forget it. He had already killed it. Anyway, it was destined that he couldn't coexist with the shattered world. Whether it was his punishment world or everything else in the shattered world, they were all gone. He clenched his fist tightly. The last bloodline of the shattered world Saint tribe, the crystal core formed by the final weapon, Sher Shah, disintegrated completely. It turned into the purest energy and was absorbed by him like all the other crystal cores in the past. The speed at which the punishment world was collapsing increased. It spread from afar to where Chen Guang and the others were standing. Enchanting was so shocked that she shouted, "The end of the world is coming." Lu Fei placed all her attention on Chen Guang. She comforted, "It's okay. Look at how calm he is." Wu Miaowan nodded as well. The great Magus director didn't say anything. "Don't be nervous. You'll be fine." Shui Lin and the others, who were further away, were not so calm. From the moment they left Wutua town, they had become pitiful captives. First, he was restrained by the merciless and unreasonable monsters. Then, he was locked up in the dungeon. He thought he was going to die for sure, but the director who only took his salary and did not work suddenly appeared. Admittedly, he had shown that he was very good at fighting in the past and had some abilities that ordinary people could not reach, but this time, the director had become even more terrifying than a monster. Well, it seemed that although the director had become a character in a fantasy novel, at least he still remembered them and could distinguish between friend and foe. Although he didn't know how he did it, it was true that he protected everyone unscathed during that terrifying attack. Shui Lin and the others were only frightened, but they did not suffer any real harm. But this time, they really couldn't sit still. They couldn't be like Enchanting and the other two, who could only watch helplessly as the world around them shattered like glass. It might not be accurate to describe their faces as ashen. They were on the verge of collapse. Shui Lin rushed to the side of the dungeon cage and shouted at the top of her voice, "Director! Director! Go!" In the face of such a terrible catastrophe as the destruction of the world, Shui Lin really didn't know how Chen Guang could save them, who were doomed to die. She could only think of waking up Chen Guang and telling him not to be distracted anymore. At least he had to live. The current director was a god. Having such a god was a great blessing to the whole of China. The other people in the task force were even worse than Shui Lin. Even the well-trained agents who had experienced hundreds of battles couldn't keep calm in this situation. Chen Guang slowly raised his head and looked at Shui Lin and the others. He put away the sudden thoughts in his mind, floated to their side, and said softly, "Everyone, I am Dolua World's great Magus Right Chen Guang himself. You don't have to panic, this is just a small matter." "Ah. Small matter?" Shui Lin stared blankly at Chen Guang. Just behind him, the edge of the shattered and collapsed world swept over like a wave in a tsunami. Everything was destroyed, but it was silent. Chen Guang nodded, yes, it's a small matter. As soon as his voice fell, the shattered world finally crashed through the dungeon where everyone was. Whether it was the strong-willed Shui Lin or the two sect leaders with superb martial arts, their minds were all shocked, and they completely lost consciousness in an instant. On the other side, Enchanting and the others also suffered the same fate. Only Chen Guang still stood proudly from the beginning to the end, watching everything around him shatter into pieces. When everything around him completely disintegrated into the void, the world began to regenerate little by little from his feet and spread into the distance. When everything stopped, Chen Guang looked at the setting sun in the distance, and then looked at the many task force members lying on the ground around him. Not far away, Enchanting and the other two were also lying there in deep sleep. Feeling the inexhaustible power of the earth explosion in his body receding like the tide, he felt a vague sense of loss in his heart. In a place further away, thousands of world shatterer killers who should have completely disappeared were neatly sitting cross-legged on the ground. However, these people who seemed to be meditating were completely silent, and there was no heartbeat. They were dead. They died extremely abruptly. There were no wounds on their bodies, and there were no internal problems in their bodies, not even a cold. But these people had no signs of life, as if their souls were hollowed out. Chen Guang sighed. This time, it was really over. The electronic voice of the heavenly Holy Grail sounded in his heart. Congratulations, Redeemer. World of Punishment completed. Survival confirmed. Destroy the world quest completion rate, 100%. Rescue the hostages quest completion rate, 98. 19%. World of Punishment overall completion rate, 99. 39%. Chen Guang let out a long sigh of relief. The second World of Punishment was really very different. In addition to the unprecedented difficulty of the mission and the unprecedented scale of the mission world, there were also more people involved than ever before, and the abilities he obtained in the mission world were also more powerful and real. Although the time was short, the degree of influence he had on the so-called soul world was actually far greater than when he was in the Sea of Time. After the mission was completed, the Heavenly Holy Grail actually gave an evaluation of the degree of completion for the first time. It was quite a pity that he didn't get a 100%, but 99. 39% seemed pretty good. No matter what, it should at least be a level of A++, right? As expected, the Heavenly Holy Grail immediately gave him another piece of good news. Due to the excellent completion of the mission reward will be issued immediately. Redeemer, please prepare to receive it. All the hard work was worth it. It actually directly issued the reward, and not another unlucky reward world. Although the old man was now bursting with confidence, he had just completed such a big mission, he was still quite tired. Of course it was good to be able to relax a bit. Redeemer, please make a wish, the Heavenly Holy Grail can grant you one wish. Chen Guang crazily roared in his heart, my wish is, to be able to grant me 10 wishes. Redeemer, please be a bit more serious, don't act cute, the scope of the wish is 2 Heavenly Holy Grail's reward limit. Sigh, this Grail really isn't open-minded at all. We're all on the same side, be a bit more generous. Seeing that this guy couldn't stop acting cute, Lioli couldn't help but shout in his heart, save your strength. Your reward is given to you by the Bell of Fate. The Bell of Fate handles matters fairly and rigorously, there is absolutely no room for bargaining. If you really want to ask for more, then you want to steal the favor of fate for the 3rd time. Do you want to provoke the world of punishment that is 100 times stronger? Accept it for me. Chen Guang's whole body quivered. He hurriedly said like a machine gun, all right, I'm still short 24 muscles for the special training of my whole body. Since the reward is 2 heavenly chains, it's not too much to let my fleshly body reach perfection, right? Reward distribution begins, please pay attention to receive it. You're sending it by express delivery, pay attention to receive it. On the other side, Lu Minghua said to Liuli without rhyme or reason. Sister Liuli, I think what you said just now is wrong. If the Bell of Fate is really completely fair, this time Chen Guang should be dead. But not only did this guy turn misfortune into blessing, he even picked up a big bargain. This is clearly not normal. Liuli was stunned at first, then she rolled her eyes. You ask me, who do I ask? Even the heavens of the endless God realm don't know why. Chapter 8:16. Chen Guang originally wanted to run to Xianqin and the other two to check if there was anything wrong with their bodies. Of course, he would never admit that he wanted to take advantage of them. However, the mission reward came without giving him any time to wait. In an instant, his whole body stiffened. This was different from when he received benefits from the heavenly Holy Grail in the past. This time, both his physical body and soul remained in the real world. However, Chen Guang could clearly sense that the power of the Holy Grail that enveloped the entire world was rapidly gathering towards the cup in his hand from afar. At this time, someone would definitely ask, didn't I leave the Holy Grail at the equipment base station when I entered the punishment realm? Why is it in my hand now? Chen Guang thought that this was a good question. With the old man's many years of experience, this cup either grew legs and ran over, or it was sent over by Azure when she had nothing better to do. Forget it, this was not important anyway. Don't worry about the details. In addition, when the heavenly Holy Grail absorbed the power of the Holy Grail, the so-called distance was not as simple as the place that could not be seen by the eyes on Earth. With Earth as the center, the range was constantly expanding. The power of the Holy Grail that was dispersed throughout the solar system, the Milky Way, the galaxy, and even the entire universe were all gathering at this moment. For the power of the Holy Grail, it seemed that the rules of time that belonged to it were not too consistent with normal time. It was countless times faster than the speed of light. Even if it gathered from the distant edge of the universe, it did not seem to take many seconds. It seemed that the real world that had merged with the real world was also about to retreat. While waiting for the heavenly Holy Grail to absorb the power of the Holy Grail again, Chen Guang let out a long sigh of relief. He did not want the entire Earth to be merged with the real world like this forever. Previously, the tremor Earth had already caused him to be in a mess. If he had not used the faith points to exchange for the pawn to take the crucial step, he would have died long ago. If other people bumped into these monsters, the troops would not be able to do anything. God knew what would happen to Earth if the real world did not retreat. At that time, he could happily walk on the road, sing songs, and get ready to eat hot pot. If an elemental creature suddenly appeared in front of him, he would be in big trouble. You're really optimistic. Liuli suddenly said in his heart. Lu Minghua's cold laughter also sounded from the side. Jia 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 jia, this is too much of a villain. In short, I'll give you 2 words, hee hee. What were the two of them doing? Chen Guang was quite puzzled. At the same time, his body began to stiffen. The reward package from the punishment realm was about to be fulfilled. He didn't understand the mechanism behind the power of the Holy Grail at all. He couldn't feel anything in his body either. He simply couldn't move. However, Chen Guang was not worried that he would be fooled. The heavenly Holy Grail never fooled anyone. Something as important as the reward could be handed over to the professionals. He just had to be confident and boldly win. However, the reactions of Lu Li and dear Minghua made him feel very unhappy. He had a bad premonition in his heart, as if he had been schemed against. It was very strange. Can you stop beating around the bush? Can't you be more sincere? Sorry, I'm a goddess, not a human. Sorry, this cute sister is also a goddess, not a human. Oh, no. You guys are making me feel very uneasy. What's going on? Lu Li said very casually, look at how nervous you are. It's just a small matter. You're the savior of the heavenly Holy Grail. With your identity and status, this small matter is not even worth mentioning. Don't force me to use my ultimate move. My virgin urine is already unbearably thirsty. You shameless bastard. Forget it, I'll tell you. This time is different from the last. The fusion of the real world and your real world can't be undone. Luli really either didn't speak, or she scared people to death when she did. Lord Guang indicated that she was joking with him. Stop fooling around, we're talking business. Dear Mingguo said, but Sister Luli is talking to you about this, which is also the business you want to know. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't move, he would have probably jumped 3 feet high. This joke is too big. A little explanation? Why? I don't understand. You have to understand even if you don't understand, because it has already become the truth. Don't think that the heavenly Holy Grail is still absorbing the power of the Holy Grail, but you also know that ever since you experienced the world of punishment for the first time, the power of the Holy Grail has never completely disappeared. It still exists in this world, but it has become extremely thin to the extent that even you, the owner of the Holy Grail, can't sense it. Qin Guang didn't give up and said, then shouldn't it be the same this time? Luli gave Qin Guang a super vivid analogy. If you put a grain of salt in the water will be tasteless. But if you throw a handful into the water, can the water still be drunk? The first time, the degree of fusion of the real world wasn't high. It's like putting 2 pieces of plasticine of different colors together. The first time, it was just a simple touch, but the second time, you used force and crushed the 2 pieces of plasticine together. Can they still be separated? Now, the Holy Grail is indeed gathering power again, but the power of the Holy Grail that was left in the outside world this time has exceeded the limit of the stability and balance of your world. The final result is that your world will no longer be pure. The real world and your real world will be inseparable. Qin Guang's eyes widened, and he couldn't say a word for a long time. Yes, just as you can imagine, the loophole has been opened. The power of the elements and various kinds of divine powers will gradually invade your world, especially here, this planet. Because of the existence of you and the Holy Grail, the power of the Holy Grail near this planet will be relatively dense. Changes will definitely happen, but I'm not sure when it will happen. Maybe it will be tomorrow, maybe it will be next year, of course, it could also be 100 years later. In short, when the quantitative change accumulates to a certain extent and reaches a qualitative change, this irreversible change will suddenly descend upon you with a loud bang. Qin Guang took a deep breath. It seemed like he was really going to become the sinner that brought about the end of the world. What will happen when the time comes? Dear Cry interrupted, Sister Luli and I aren't sure either. But based on my guess, it might not only be elemental creatures. For example, a 3-headed hellhound or something might suddenly descend. This is also not too accurate. Lord Guang shivered. Don't scare me. It sounds so scary. Dear Cry continued, of course, it's also possible that the ordinary people in this world of yours, because of the differences in their physiques, start to absorb different divine powers bit by bit and obtain some supernatural abilities, gene unlocking and so on. It's also possible that a space-time hole suddenly appears and they fall into another small world or something. Anyway, whatever strange and incomprehensible things happen, you just have to blame it on the heavenly Holy Grail and the real world. Lord Guang's face was ashen. Damn it. I don't have the ability of the red sauce exploder now. This way, my protagonist aura will collapse. And don't say such a tragic thing so casually. Luli laughed. No, don't panic. This is another situation. Originally, perhaps the power of the Holy Grail wasn't dense enough to cause a change, but because a certain someone obtained an ability that he shouldn't have, his body's attraction to the power of the Holy Grail exceeded the limit. To a certain extent, it hindered the Holy Grail from retracting its power, ultimately causing this world to be contaminated with too much of the power of the Holy Grail. This certain someone, of course, is you. This ability that you shouldn't have obtained is the identity of the Earth Sauce Exploder. Feel it carefully again, your Earth Sauce Exploder ability is still there. It's just that it has become weaker, and you haven't noticed it for a while. Qin Guang's heart moved slightly. It really was like that. There was a slight feeling. Just now, he was still feeling melancholy. He had once stood at the top of the world, but suddenly became an ordinary person again. This abrupt change really made him feel a little uncomfortable. Although his power had been greatly weakened now, the natural high level of the Earth Sauce Exploder was still there. Luli laughed. Yes, that's right. If this world will have all kinds of mutants sooner or later, you, Chen Guang, will be the first mutant. The king of the Earth element. The Earth. The Earth Sauce Exploder. If you didn't say the last 3 words, your aura would be much stronger. Chen Guang sighed. According to what they said, it seemed like he had really become a sinner. The most awkward thing was that even though he knew this wasn't good news, he couldn't change anything. Life was like being raped. If one was powerless to resist, he could only close his eyes and simply enjoy it. This was the general description of the situation. Sigh, what will happen? His body could move again. Chen Guang raised his head and looked at the dusky sky in the distance. He didn't know if it was the dust brought by the remnant earth element, or if it was the power of the Holy Grail that he could see with his naked eyes. In any case, his heart was aching. Don't ask me. If I knew everything, would have escaped long ago. Why would I wait for you to save me? Accept your fate. All right, to put it bluntly, what I will face next is just like the middle realm of the Heavenly Spirit Cup. There are no routines at all, and it will happen as I say. I'll just take it one step at a time. Luli humphed. Bingwa, congratulations on answering correctly. However, there's no reward. I can give you another famous saying. Chen Guang waved his hand. No need. I don't want to know Duo Fu. No. I'm not asking for more luck this time. Then I'm all ears. The boat will cross the bridge when it comes to it, and the cart will cross the mountain when it comes to it. You're crazy. Isn't this just an extended version of Duo Fu? You can interpret it however you want. Anyway, it doesn't matter to you, me, and Dear Cry. Do you understand? This real world of yours, which is this universe, is just one of the billions and billions of universes in my father's master god of chaos body. I've told you about this a long time ago. Even if this universe is completely destroyed because of the fusion with the real world, the heavenly Holy Grail can still bring you to another universe that is similar to this one. If you're unwilling to leave your homeland, I'll just have to wait for you to rescue me. I'll create a mirror image that is exactly the same as this Earth in another universe. I can even duplicate a person for you. Chen Guang shook his head. What a joke. Can this even be a concept? Even if you create a mirror image, even if it looks exactly the same, can the person be the same person? Take my parents for example. I only have 2 parents in this world. Should I go to a completely different universe and recognize another 2 parents? Don't be ridiculous. This is your view of the world, not mine. I can't accept this theory of yours. Liuli pursed her lips. We're just saying it casually. In any case, you can do whatever you want. How things will turn out isn't in our control. Anyway, you're on your own. Now that your physical body has reached perfection, we'll give you a big surprise in a few days. Hurry up and stop talking about unlucky surprises, actions, and plans. I've been listening to you brag for a year. The universe is about to be destroyed by me, and you're still accumulating power? However, Azure ignored Chen Guang's ridicule and went silent after she finished speaking. The melancholic old Master Guang sighed deeply as he held the cup in his hand. Nothing seemed to have changed on the surface, but he knew that it was just as Liuli had said. This world was different from the past. Please don't suddenly drop a golden-armored flaming 3-headed celestial hound on my head. Forget it. In any case, the old man was the ancestor of Espers, and he had been at max level from the start. In game terms, the old man was now LV 99. He looked a little weak, but his level was still there. It was just that I've emptied my mana. I just have to think of a way to recover it. Let's test out the current power of the soy sauce bomb. Qin Guang raised his hand and pointed at the base of the shattered, which was as good as new, and roared, "Fall." A rock the size of a thumb fell from the building. It was unknown whether it was blown by the wind or caused by the power of the marmalade bomber. What AF * king huge difference. Listen to my command and be born from nothingness. Obelisk's giant god warrior that destroys everything. Unwilling to give up, Old Master Guang opened his right palm and created a new set of incantations. A cool breeze blew past, causing his long hair to flutter. However, nothing happened. Qin Guang lowered his head and squinted at his palm. His eyesight, which was honed from his pencil sharpening and dart-throwing skills, allowed him to see a clay figurine about the thickness of a nose hair. If not for his eyesight, he wouldn't have seen it at all. F***CK. Such a small giant god warrior. Are you kidding me? What can you do with this? If I speak too loudly, it will be blown away. My giant god warrior has completely shrunk. It has shrunk to the point of being blown away. Everyone else was still in deep sleep. No one saw the desolation on Qin Guang's face. Stiff. Rua. The difference was so huge that it was a little unbearable. Forget it. At least my Esper ability is more useful than that useless male protagonist who can only bend a spoon. At least it's the only one in the world. After carefully checking the heartbeats of Enchanting and the other two, Qin Guang was slightly relieved after confirming that they were fine and sleeping normally. Don't ask him how he checked other people's heartbeats. Buddha says, don't tell. As for the task force on Shui Lin's side, they weren't so lucky. Qin Guang just put his finger in front of their noses. Yes, they're breathing and alive. Next. After he was done, he confirmed that everyone was alive. Then, he went to the group of assassins from the broken world. As far as the eye could see, the scene was a little frightening. Over 1,000 people were sitting cross-legged neatly in a large square formation, but it was deathly silent. There was no expression of pain or struggle on the faces of these people who had died long ago. They looked quiet and serene. If it wasn't for the fact that it was broad daylight, it would be even scarier than a horror movie. Qin Guang swept his gaze across and saw a relatively familiar face in the front row of the square formation. He remembered the appearance of this young man. This was Shattered World's ultimate weapon. It seemed to be called World Sand. He was also dead. For some reason, Qin Guang took a step in the direction of the young man. Suddenly, a relatively fierce gust of wind blew over. Qin Guang was dazzled. The young man's body, hair, face, and hands outside his clothes were blown away like sand in the wind. His clothes slowly fell to the ground. After a while, there was only a pile of yellow sand where he had been sitting. At least the others could leave their bodies intact. But even his body had turned into sand. Chapter 8:17. Looking at this scene, Qin Guang couldn't help but think of the final weapon, Sha, who had seen through the mundane world before her death. He shook his head and wanted to throw this image out of his mind. But that drop of water that he didn't know whether it was a tear or something else appeared in the depths of his mind. It was as if the sun was shining through the window of his heart and shining on this drop of water that no longer existed, making it crystal clear. It floated quietly in the air, but it revealed an eternal loneliness and sadness. It was like a bright Tiffany diamond, and also like Johnny Walker's white rum. Even if it was just in his mind, it seemed to be able to intoxicate him. Qin Guang raised his head slightly and looked at the gray sky at a 45-degree angle. The light breeze carried the fragrance of the Provence lavender under Mount Baral to his face. Collect. Collect for me. This guy can't even rest in peace even in death, and he actually wants to shake my mind. I'm almost depressed. I don't believe that there are good people in an assassin organization. This is ridiculous. Besides, so what if you're a good person? Do good people have to not die? This is my world of punishment. Everyone in the world of destruction must die, no one can be left alive, or I will die myself. Anyway, right, Chen is already a big villain in the Dolua world. If you're really a good person, then I'm the big villain. It's natural for a villain to kill a good person. At most, I'll just burn more paper money for you. I heard that watching a movie in the underworld is quite expensive. A 2D movie costs more than 60 million, and an IMAX 3D movie costs at least 100 million. Forget it, why am I thinking about this? Everything is empty after death, why should I spoil my mood because of a dead person? If you don't die, then I die. It's that simple. It's funny that this guy actually wants to remind me, and still hopes that I, the main character, will kill the great demon king hiding behind the scenes? If this wasn't true, if I wasn't the great demon king myself, I might have really believed your words. Wait a minute, something doesn't seem right. Forget it, this isn't important. Why do I keep thinking about a dead man? He planned to turn around and leave. As the great director, he would not clean up the mess like collecting the corpse. He would deal with it after Shui Lin and the others woke up. At this moment, his sharp eyes saw a small leather booklet on the edge of Sher Shah's clothes on the ground. It was slowly falling out of his pocket. Small notebook? What would it say? Just take a look and you'll know. As a very curious person, he couldn't help but lower his head to take a look at a leaflet on the ground. If it was a beautifully packaged leather book, the temptation would be even more irresistible. He gently took the leather notebook in his hand, shook off the dust on it, and flipped it open. Chen Guang was speechless. This was a diary. The first page wrote the time and date, followed by Sher Shah's words that sounded like he was talking to himself. One day, 12 years ago, he wrote his first sentence. Today, the teacher said that he's going to teach us something new. I want to learn more seriously, but why does this new thing require me to slit someone's throat with a knife? 3 days later, he wrote like this again. There are so many people in the base. We can earn money no matter what we do. We also know so many things. Why must we kill people? The Buddhist scriptures say that all living things are equal. Although I don't believe in Buddhism, I believe that all living things are equal. No one is more noble than anyone else. The world is so big, can't it accommodate a few more people? Chen Guang silently calculated the age at which Sher Shah wrote this diary. He felt that it was very unbelievable. If he didn't count wrong, he was still a 6-year-old child at that time. Think about what he could write when he was 6. He could be considered a genius if he wrote moonlight in front of my bed. Damn, if this guy didn't live in the killer base, he would be a literary giant. But 10 days later, the style of his diary changed drastically. I killed people, 3 of them. I didn't want to kill them. She is my friend. But I had no choice. If I didn't kill them, I would die. It was she who made the first move. When I wanted to discuss with them what to do, she suddenly strangled my neck. He was no longer my friend. He became a beast that wanted to eat people. It was too scary. But I didn't expect them to be so weak. I only used a little strength and they all died. Later, the frequency of Sher Shah's diary became much lower. Maybe he only wrote it once a year. But almost every article had a similar line at the beginning. I killed people, X. The number X was getting bigger and bigger. The highest number was 2 years ago, when it was 27. From time to time, Sher Shah would talk to himself. I want to be a good person. If I can't do it in this life, then in the next. I want to see the outside world. I want to know if my biological parents really abandoned me like what my teachers said. Maybe I was kidnapped and sold. Maybe they have been looking for me. But I don't dare to look for them. Maybe the day I find them will be the day they die. Killers can't have families. I'm free. From today onwards, my name is Sher Shah. I have my own surname. I said I won't go out to kill people. Either they send someone to kill me, or they let me live quietly by the lake. Qin Guang closed the diary slowly and shook the dust off it. He suddenly understood. When the suspicion in the depths of his heart, which had almost become a nightmare in his heart, suddenly became real, he became calm instead. In a sense, Sher Shah was really a good person. He killed many people, but he had no choice. Just like how Sher Shah had to kill him, he had to kill others. The one who forced him was the heavenly Holy Grail. The one who forced Sher Shah was Broken World's teacher. As for those people who died in his hands, they weren't good people either. They were so pitiful. Qin Guang looked at the pile of sand. He sighed in his heart. This person, even if he is a genius, even if he is as strong as I am, to put it bluntly, he is still a small boat in life. In life, there are many times when one has no choice but to do as one pleases. Qin Guang didn't blame himself. There was no use in blaming himself. Sher Shah had killed so many people on his path of growth. Dying tragically in his own hands seemed to be retribution. Everyone just wanted to live. The only difference was that Sher Shah lived a small life, while he lived a great life. That was all. At this moment, Lord Guang still didn't know that the moment he picked up the World Sands notebook, that drop of water that should have disappeared long ago suddenly fell from the sky of a certain realm in the heavenly Holy Grail, landing in a stretch of yellow sand that stretched as far as the eye could see. The scorching summer sky couldn't evaporate this water droplet. Instead, it burrowed into the soil. In the distance, Shui Lin gradually moaned. He opened his eyes and looked in Qin Guang's direction in a daze. His brain seemed to be a little muddled and he couldn't remember what had happened. Chief Qin, what happened? Shui Lin propped himself up and tilted his head to look at the neatly seated corpse of the World Shatterer assassin. Qin Guang relaxed. Very good, his memory had been erased. He couldn't remember anything. Nothing much. You were drugged and held hostage. This chief personally took action and killed the assassins. This operation ended successfully. All the World Shatterer assassins were executed. Not a single one was spared. Huh? Shui Lin's mind froze even more. Just when Qin Guang wanted to say something, his body suddenly trembled. In his eyes, he saw countless threads of faith stretching in his direction from the distant horizon. His mind sank into the heavenly Holy Grail. On one of the platforms on the city wall, he saw a 300-foot-long Airbus A320 statue slowly float up from the surface of the platform. Although the 7 platforms next to it were still empty, Qin Guang remembered that there had once been 7 other statues here. It was just that they had mysteriously disappeared. Damn! The statue of the world of pilots, which he had searched so hard for but failed to find, had suddenly appeared out of the blue without any warning? There was no warning at all. Just like that. Chapter 8:18. Azure, who was planning to meditate, also flew up from Cloud City. She floated in the air and looked at the big airplane statue that was slowly emerging from afar. When the airplane statue was completely formed, it looked exactly the same as the original Airbus A320. Even the patterns and decorations on it were the same as the one that Qin Guang piloted. In a sense, this A320 could be regarded as a model airplane, but this model was a bit big. It was more than 300 meters long, which was equivalent to 10 times the size of the original plane. Why is this? Azure seemed to be talking to herself, but also seemed to be asking Lu Ming. Lu Ming replied without hesitation, "Don't ask me, I don't know." Azure suddenly clapped her hands and came to a sudden realization. The reason why the 8th statue couldn't appear before was related to the loss of the previous 7 statues. Sister Azure, we have confirmed this a long time ago. At that time, what gave us a headache was how to solve this problem. Azure nodded, "That's right, but now that the statue has appeared on its own, why should we care about why? It doesn't matter at all." Huh? Doesn't matter? Lu Ming's huge fruit swayed. It was obvious that he had suffered a big mental blow. It took a long time for him to recover, although I feel that something is wrong. What you said makes sense. In fact, everyone knew that this eighth statue must have some connection with the punishment realm that Qin Guang had just experienced, but including Azure, they only knew how and why. As for the deeper reason, perhaps no one understood it. Qin Guang's spirit body floated in front of the airplane statue. He looked left and right, up and down, feeling that it was not cool enough. Change it to J-20, thank you. As soon as he said that, the Airbus A320 softened like a fluid, and the overall image quickly evolved into the top fighter in China. In a few seconds, a domineering, mighty, and dazzling supergiant J-20 model appeared in front of him. Smacking his lips, Qin Guang nodded. It looked much more pleasing to the eye this way. In that short amount of time, the threads of faith coming from the outside world had already passed through the barrier between the real world and the world within a cup. They appeared out of thin air in the sky far away from Cloud City and spread at an extremely fast speed, connecting to the statue of J-20. Qin Guang seemed to have seen this scene before. But compared to other statues, the pilot statue's faith value thread seemed a little special. There were many fine threads, about half of Otto's. This meant that in this world, the people who would care about who was the best at piloting a plane were about half the people who drove a car. There was nothing strange about this. Although they were both driving skills, airplanes were not seen every day like cars. Although everyone knew about it, the number of people who would think about it was much fewer than the driving enthusiasts. But the plane statue's faith value output was much higher than the Alto statue's. From the very beginning, it had reached the maximum of 52,000. The reason was none other than the tens of thousands of exceptionally thick threads of faith value. Unlike car drivers, most pilots were real professionals in this industry. They were either pilots of civil airplanes or pilots of the Air Force. In the civil aviation industry, safe flight was more important than anything else. Qin Guang's achievements were great. He brought aviation safety to a new level. After receiving the Hero's Medal, he generously opened a course and publicly explained flight control skills. His selfless dedication was great, but this was not the end. His lecture records were saved. From the moment school ended, the relevant departments of major airlines around the world concentrated on sorting out and analyzing his lecture records and compiling a monograph. The current level of progress was just the beginning. The flight control skills he brought out were far more than that. He was simply a bottomless pit. His lecture records were like a deep sea full of treasures. As long as they could continue to decipher them, what awaited the entire civil aviation industry would be a leap in human flight technology, and there was no end in sight in the short term. As for the Air Force, whether it was in Huaxia or internationally, the private information about fighter jet piloting that Qin Guang had deliberately stuffed into the course was even more treasured. The result of this fact was that his reputation in the entire field of flight control had directly reached its peak. Especially those who had personally listened to his lectures in the chat room, they regarded him as a god. These tens of thousands of extremely thick threads of faith value came from the students in the chat room. In addition, there were about tens of millions of relatively thick threads of faith value, which came from the employees of major airlines around the world. The influence of the Xiangjiang gambling race was different from that of the underground racing world. After all, it was an underground race that could not be seen in the light. This time, he got positive publicity that spread to the whole world. He himself had put in a lot of effort for this statue. Whether it was hype or excessive generosity, his several consecutive days of late-night flying lessons had indeed accumulated his reputation in this industry to a considerable height. Now that the statue had been completed, the production of faith value directly went off the charts, which was also the benefit of his accumulation. When the statue here stabilized, Qin Guang returned outside. Xue Lin, who had just barely propped herself up, looked at him with a face full of shame. "Director, I've embarrassed you." Qin Guang walked to his side and patted him on the shoulder. "It's nothing. There's something wrong with our intelligence work. You didn't do anything wrong. You sacrificed a colleague in exchange for this result. It's still acceptable. As the two chatted, the others gradually woke up one after another. These people's reactions were no different from Xue Lin's. They were shocked by the terrible scene of neatly arranged but strangely dead bodies. Chen Guang was not in the mood to explain to everyone. As the saying goes, a higher-ranking official can crush a lower-ranking official. The Guangding General Office was also a special unit with the nature of a special agent organization. It was not something low-level employees should do to get to the bottom of things. He left Xue Lin in the world-shattering base to clean up the mess, while he drove the van to Wutua town with the sect masters of the Thousand Despair sect and Myriad Flower Valley and Enchanting. However, there was something that gave him a headache. Everyone else had woken up, but only Enchanting, Wu Miaowan, and Lu Fei did not move. Even when they returned to Wutua town and settled the three of them in the hotel, the three of them were still in deep sleep. Chen Guang secretly pinched Enchanting's leg, but there was no movement. Sect Master Wu, did something happen to the three of them? Chen Guang asked anxiously in the room. Wu Miaowan's master, Wu Qingming, was the Myriad Flower Valley master who was famous for her elixirs. She was a divine physician with a high level of Chinese medicine. She had just taken the pulse of the three of them. Wu Qingming frowned slightly. The pulse of the three of them is stable, and they have sufficient qi and blood. There are no internal injuries in their bodies. They should have woken up by now. That's right. What's going on? Wu Qingming tidied up her clothes and stood up. Director Chen, you don't have to worry too much. The three of them are breathing steadily. Let's wait and see for a while. If they still don't wake up, we'll think of another way. Abbess Xine Yuan, who was standing at the side, also said, Sect Master Wu's medical skills are extremely high. With her around, nothing serious will happen. Enchanting and Wu Miaowan are also the eldest disciples of our two sections. Their physiques are far stronger than ordinary people. It's just a small matter. Thank you, Director Chen. Wu Qingming nodded. That's right. Director Chen, your friend is not an ordinary person. Her aptitude is quite high. If we saw her when she was young, we might have taken her in as a disciple. I'll go and write a prescription first. I'll go to the pharmacy in this town to get a few doses of refreshing medicine. If they don't wake up in an hour, we'll feed them. The two sect masters were exceptionally calm. Chen Guang did not have any good ideas. Wu Qingming went out to look for medicine, while Abbess Xine Yuan sat in the living room with her sword in her arms. It seemed that she was performing her duty as a guard. On the other hand, the Chinese military had reached an agreement with the neighboring country. Several military helicopters were taking off from the border airport and heading straight to this place to help with the follow-up work. Only Chen Guang knew that all the members of the broken world were dead, but the others could not feel at ease. On the other hand, Xue Lin and the rest of the task force were still confused at the broken world base. They had 1,000 mysteries in their hearts, but the director did not seem to be interested in explaining. Team leader Xue, these people died so strangely. Don't ask me. I don't know anything. Maybe it's an inner force ability that Director Chen learned from the Wen clan. Don't ask so much. Xue Lin dealt with a certain agent who was overly curious. She thought to herself, forget it. No matter how strange the situation is now, the task force came to Mount Baylor to carry out a mission. Although the current situation of the mission was beyond everyone's understanding, in a sense, the Special Affairs Bureau, a special unit that replaced the Special Affairs Bureau, had to face situations that were beyond the understanding of ordinary people, right? When she thought about it this way, she suddenly felt better. He waved his hand again and shouted, everyone, check carefully. See if there's anyone left. This is the first big operation of the Guangding General Bureau. We can't afford to make any mistakes. At the bottom of the mountain, Ouyang Tianqing was running forward in the tunnel with all his might. His face was pale, and his forehead was covered in sweat. With his inner force cultivation, he should not have broken a sweat while running like this, but his face was covered in cold sweat. The scene he saw in the Dolua world was still playing over and over in his mind. Just recalling that scene was enough to make him tremble uncontrollably. How terrifying, how strange. Chen Guang was not human at all. Such a powerful broken world holy clan was wiped out. Not a single one was left alive. They could not even cause him any trouble. From the start to the end, he was never serious. It was like a cat toying with a mouse. If he did not see it with his own eyes, Ouyang Tianqing would probably still be immersed in the illusion that inner force martial artists were invincible. At this moment, all he could think about was, what was the truth of this world? What kind of power did Chen Guang have? Other than Chen Guang, how many people were like him? I, Ouyang Tianqing, want to be like that too. Chapter 8:19. Ouyang Tianqing jumped out of the secret tunnel and disappeared into the woods. He did not know that there was a mysterious rune on the surface of his heart that was flickering along with his heartbeat. He was very unfortunate. As a mortal in a sense, he was inexplicably involved in such a matter. However, he was lucky that the battle on the ground did not kill him. The three great patriarchs of the world-shattering clan had escaped far away, and the battle had not happened above the basement where he was hiding. Therefore, he survived. As someone who was not part of the Heavenly Holy Grail's plan, his memory was not erased. The fictitious world-shattering holy tribe had lost their bodies, their powers, and their souls. However, before the three elders died, they had left a mark of resentment on the body of Ouyang Tianqing, the only survivor of the world-shattering holy tribe, who was related to the world-shattering holy tribe. What was false was not necessarily false, and what was true was not necessarily true. If everyone believed in something, even if it was a lie, it would become the truth in the eyes of the world. The real and the illusory were eternal enemies. At least, for Ouyang Tianqing, the world-shattering holy tribe and grand sorcerer Right Chen were the most realistic. His belief in this matter was even more sincere than Chen Guang himself. On the other side, the three women did not wake up. Chen Guang did not know what to do. While Wu Qingming went out to buy medicine, he crossed his legs and rested his head on the sofa. He was thinking about the second volume of the painting volume, which was the real part about the inner strength. He had spent a lot of effort to make his body complete, so of course, he had to learn the inner strength. Although the ability of the earth-paced exploder was of a high level, it could only fly a pebble and summon a giant soldier god. It was really not good enough to be used in public, and he did not know how to improve it. It seemed more reliable to learn inner strength. He thought about it for a while, but it did not seem to work. He decided to do it at night. According to the incantation, the painting volume used literature to enter the Tao. Before guiding the Qi sense, one must take a bath and change clothes, recite the classics, nourish the Qi, and calm the spirit. Then, at midnight, one must light a white candle to make the shape of the Big Dipper. First, one must recite an obscure and profound classical Chinese in his heart, so that one could enter a state of confusion. Alright, this couldn't be said to be fooling around, but rather using the writings of the predecessors to cultivate one's mind. A good essay could either depict beautiful scenery or express one's feelings. If one were to read it seriously and put one's own feelings into it, one's emotions would naturally burst forth. This was the emotion that came from the article. It could be the surge of blood, or the melancholy of spring and autumn. It didn't matter. What was important was that the heart was moved, and the emotions were aroused. Then, according to the instructions of the incantation, the breathing and exhalation, thinking about the feeling of Qi. This feeling of Qi might not be achieved overnight. Those who were talented, like Wenwen, could successfully capture the feeling of Qi in less than a month or two, and then store it in the Dantian, officially embarking on the path of an inner strength martial artist. Those who were not talented, like Lu Chao's bodyguard, Tai Xinju, could barely form the feeling of Qi after 7 or 8 years. At this time, he was already in his 20s. After another 8 or 10 years, he would reach the peak of his life, and at this time, he would be in his 30s. Unfortunately, this peak was only at the level of muscle strength, which could not be shown in public. After that, he would be thankful that his cultivation did not decline. Martial arts were ruthless, and one's innate talent and comprehension shackled the limits of one's cultivation. The so-called hard work could make up for one's lack of talent, but that was only under the same conditions. For example, when one cultivated for 1 year, and Tai Xinju cultivated for 10 or 20 years. How could they compare? The innate difference in innate talent and comprehension could not be made up for later. Chen Guang felt that with his talent, he would be able to cross the threshold in 1 day, then 2 days for muscle jing, 3 days for bone jing, 4 days for skin jing, and 5 days for great perfection to become a great scholar like Wenwen. After 6 days, he would probably be invincible. It took 7 days to build Rome, but it only took 6 days for the old man to be invincible. I'll start work tonight if I have nothing to do. However, there was a problem. Among the descendants of the Wen family, when Wenwen first stimulated her sense of qi, she recited the Song of Righteousness, written by Wen Tianxiang in prison in the southern Song dynasty. But what should he read? Do you also read the Song of Morality? This was not necessarily the case. Throughout history, most of the descendants of the school of Wen read the Song of Righteousness, but there were also people who read Yu Fei's Rivers Run Red, Xian Qiji's Breaking the Formation, or Su Shi's Shuidiaogetu. It was not as if there were no predecessors of the school of Wen who read the Analects of Confucius and the Book of Songs. There were no restrictions on what kind of articles one could read. As long as one was emotionally invested, one would be able to achieve results. There was another question. Why did it have to be in classical Chinese or ancient Chinese? Weren't all the articles in the world just articles? The articles written by the ancients seem to be ancient Chinese now, but 100 years ago, 200 years ago, or even in the era when the articles were written, were they still ancient Chinese? It was not wrong to say that they were popular song lyrics. In that case, the words in the mnemonics would be illogical and contradictory. Therefore, for the experience and lessons of the predecessors, we can't not believe them completely. We have to think dialectically, make our own choices, and make our own judgments. Therefore, Chen Guang silently took out the Popcorn 6 SPLUS from his bag and first downloaded the e-book Jin Ping Mei to calm himself down. This was also ancient Chinese, and it was also very literary. The words were also very artistic, but because of some unspeakable reasons, it was a little bit of a bad name. Anyway, since he had nothing to do, he might as well give it a try first. If there was no effect, he could just change to the Song of Righteousness. After making up his mind, Chen Guang was idle again. He was simply bored. Poor Wenwen. If she knew that a certain insensitive person was actually planning to use Jin Ping Mei to stimulate the sense of qi, she was afraid that she would either die of anger or strangle Chen Guang to death. My head, at this moment, Xian Qin suddenly opened her eyes slowly. Then, she raised her hand and rubbed her temples, which were swollen and painful. When Chen Guang, who was sitting next to her, heard the sound, he hurriedly trotted in front of her. Are you okay? Are you okay? Xian Qin looked up at Chen Guang and was stunned for a while. Then, she opened her mouth. Grand Magister right, Chen? Big Daisy Elder? Chen Guang, huh? On the other side, Wu Miaowan's voice also came. Mr. Right? Chen Guang, damn it. They didn't lose their memories. This didn't make sense. Alright, there wasn't anything scientific about this. While scientists were still researching whether antimatter really existed and whether there were white holes behind black holes, the old man had already treated other planes as his backyard. Oh, right, these planes and worlds were still in the old man's cup, hee. Then the problem was, how should I deal with these two? How should I fool them so that they would pretend that nothing had happened in the following days? At this moment, Lu Fei's voice came from behind him. It seemed that the three of them had woken up at the same time. Chen Guang? Lu Fei said in a low voice, her tone filled with confusion and lack of confidence. Chen Guang's heart relaxed. Fortunately, Sister Lu Fei had forgotten. At least he could fool one less person. Has your Dolua world been destroyed? Will you continue to stay in this world in the future? Then are you Chen Guang or right Chen? Lu Fei spoke again. Poor Master Guang pinched his forehead. His heart was so tired. Lu Fei didn't lose her memories either. Bureau Chief Chen, are they all awake? Enchanting's master suddenly appeared at the door again. She looked very calm and expressionless, but for some reason, Chen Guang didn't like this master very much. He always felt subconsciously afraid of her. He definitely wouldn't admit that he had accidentally eaten Enchanting this time and felt guilty. Chen Guang nodded. Yes, they're awake. Master, please wait outside for a while. I have something to tell them. At this time, the benefits of being in a high position and being a bureau chief were revealed. Although Master Xian Yuan and Wu Qingming were considered elders, in the Guangding General Headquarters, they were at most people from the pugilistic world who cooperated with the headquarters. Chen Guang's identity represented the official position and was the official bureau chief. In addition to what happened today, although the two elders didn't know how Chen Guang did it, they felt that he must have a real trump card that was not known to others. His strength couldn't be underestimated, and they no longer treated him as a useless bureau chief who relied on Wenwen support like before. Chen Guang closed the door and then spent about 10 seconds to adjust his mood and think about what to say. As a result, in front of Xian, Wu Miaowan, and Lu Fei, his aura suddenly changed. He didn't answer anyone's question. Instead, he walked to the window with his hands behind his back and his neck held high. He looked out of the window quietly and took a deep breath. An aura called melancholy gushed out from his body and shrouded the ward firmly. The world-class acting skills were activated, making the whole room melancholy with him. I can't go back anymore. Damn the broken world Saint clan, they chose to perish together. Even if they die, they won't leave a passage for me. Chen Guang's voice was slightly hoarse, with a unique magnetism, like a baritone from an old-fashioned record player. Xian and the other two were stunned. Chen Guang turned his head and looked at the three of them. Under the corner of his right eye, a tear fell silently from his cheek. Ah, how sad it was. How desperate it was for a person to never be able to return to his hometown. Xian and the other two gasped. The radiance of motherhood gradually burst out uncontrollably in their hearts. They had been played by the world-class acting skills. Chen Guang suddenly smiled again. But it doesn't matter. I have no family in that world. The rest of my life is here. I was born and raised here, and I will be buried here in the future. My name is Chen Guang, not Right Chen. I'll treat my past life as a dream. I'll treat my life of studying and studying magic year after year as a dream. I'll treat it as if I've never recovered those meaningless memories. This way, I won't be tortured to death by longing. I've already lost everything in that world. There won't even be anyone who remembers me. This world has treated me well. I have family, friends, and you guys here. There's nothing bad about being a person without a past. Be it magic or studying, aren't they all survival skills of near life? I'm now a deputy director in this world. In Dolua world, my social status isn't any lower than a great magister's. I'm doing quite well. Ha 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 ha. He laughed again, but as he laughed, tears streamed down his face. As a super professional world-class actor, crying scenes didn't require onion eye drops at all. He could do it whenever he wanted. It wasn't something that Miss Number's stand-in could compare to. Master Guang expressed that apart from being an outstanding actor, he also seemed to have the potential to be a scriptwriter. Aunt Xiong Yao-style jokes really came out of nowhere. The key was that the effects were pretty good. Enchanting and the other two actually didn't have any problems. The three of them jumped off the hospital bed and hugged Qinguang from 3 different directions. Lu Fei's eyes were filled with tears. Don't be sad. At least you still have us. We remember you. Enchanting's nose twitched. That's right. The 3 of us went to see that world with you. We know that you were once a great magister. Wu Miaowan said, Director Great Magister, don't cry. Stand up and rub. No, we all know your secret. You have to teach me. Being hugged by the 3 of them, Qinguang's eyes almost turned into crescent moons. Fortunately, he controlled himself in time. He coughed lightly and continued with a straight face. But only the 3 of you know that Xuelin and your master have lost their memories. Although I don't know why, maybe the rules of the world think that they shouldn't know these things. But the 3 of you still have that memory. I still don't understand, but you have to remember this well. You have to keep this matter to yourself. Don't ever mention it to anyone else. Remember. Remember. The 3 of them nodded and hugged him even tighter. Just treat this as the biggest secret in the hearts of the 4 of them. Heaven knows, earth knows, you know, we know. The 3 of them were secretly delighted like little girls, just like little fans who had secretly become friends with a big star. Qinguang was a star now, but it didn't matter whether he was a star or not. How could a star be more powerful than a destructive great magister? The moment they saw him, they felt like they were living in a fantasy novel. Moreover, they were one of the main characters. What could be more blissful than this? Chapter 820. It didn't take long for Wu Qingming to come back. To be on the safe side, Enchanting and the other 2 drank a traditional Chinese medicine to refresh their minds and restore their energy. She deserved to be the master of Wanhua Valley. Even if she didn't have the right medicinal materials, the effect of the prescription was not comparable to that of ordinary people. After the 3 women drank the medicine, they were immediately refreshed. Not only did they not have any sequelae, but they were also full of energy. Several military helicopters from home had also arrived. After dropping off the follow-up troops, they were ready to return immediately. Qinguang thought that since the people of the World Breaker were all dead, Xuelin and the others were no longer in any danger in Wutua town, and his punishment world was completely over. It was a waste of life to stay here and waste time, so he simply wanted to go back to Wujing first. He didn't know what would happen when he stimulated the qi sense. After all, Wutua town was not his territory, so he always felt uncertain. The way of practicing martial arts was broad and profound. Maybe a little discomfort would affect the state. It was better to go back. Therefore, he, the director who didn't want to be in charge, was ready to run away. He could take the military helicopter on the return trip, which saved time and effort. Enchanting, Wu Miaowan, and Lu Fei all had that little secret in their hearts. They felt that there was nothing wrong with the Grand Magister right now, but there was a lingering melancholy hidden in his eyes. The 3 of them secretly felt sorry for him, so they followed Qinguang back to the 5 capital cities. Abbess Yuan and Wu Qingming took the initiative to participate in this action, but they didn't help anything from the beginning to the end. The 2 had the cultivation of the peak of skin strength, but they lost a part of their memory in a daze. When they came to their senses, everything was over. If they didn't participate in the aftermath work, they would lose face as the masters of the 2 sections. Therefore, the 2 did not follow Qinguang back, but went to the base of the World Breaker at the foot of Mount Baral to help Xuelin deal with the aftermath properly. Although they had all been executed, the base of the broken world was well preserved. Not a single piece of information was missing. After digesting all the information, not only would they be able to solve many unsolved cases, but they would also be able to get hold of the weaknesses of those who had ill intentions. Why not? After arriving at the 5 capital cities, Qinguang planned to take a private car straight back to his rented apartment. Enchanting and Wu Miaowan wanted to go back as well, but Xuelin kept sending over important information from time to time. The headquarters of the 5 capital cities needed to be coordinated and handled. As the director, Chen Guang was used to being a hands-off boss. On the other hand, Enchanting and Wu Miaowan, the 2 deputies, had to work like a horse, unable to get away. In addition, their masters felt that they had not performed well in this incident, so they had secretly ordered them to stay in the 5 capitals and take charge of the work. They must not affect the status of the Thousand Despair sect and the Myriad Flower Valley in the Jianghu under the new circumstances. Therefore, even though Enchanting and Wu Miaowan were a little unwilling, they had no choice but to bid farewell to Chen Guang for the time being. They were ready to return to the headquarters building in the city. Director Archmage, don't be too sad. Just like you said, since you can't go back, you should live well in this world. No matter what, you still have me, my little darling, and Sister Lufei in this world. Before they parted, Wu Miaowan comforted Chen Guang in a youthful manner. Enchanting added, and your family, and Wenwen. Oh, that's right, and that classmate of yours, Sun Xiaoxuan, your teacher Zhua, Jiang Yage, Jin Shiyue, and your director Wu Tong. Damn it. Director Fickle, you have a lot of debts. Why do I feel that it's a good thing that you can't go back? Otherwise, who's going to help you pay off your debt of love? He's truly worthy of being Chen Guang's right-hand man. He's so clear about Chen Guang's matters. It's not that he doesn't know about it, but he's startled by it. He's practically cleaning up Chen Guang's debt of love. Chen Guang's face froze. He thought to himself, you seem to have forgotten about Sister Tangying. Forget it, there's nothing to show off about this. He was also feeling a bit of a pain in the ass. He thought to himself, this old man is a verbal cannon. Although my heart is always on fire, my actions have always been upright and straight. Don't look at how many people I've pointed out. If I ask myself honestly, it's all because people in Jianghu have no choice. Besides, most people and I are very innocent. Teacher Zhua and I, it was a coincidence that caused our emotions to explode. Although this old man is a righteous person, I am also a hot-blooded young man. In that kind of situation and that kind of state of mind, I simply couldn't resist it. That's right, you can't blame me for this. Wenwen and I were reasonable. Although I had some thoughts about her, it was just a thought. How the hell would I know? I knocked her out and pushed her down, but she still wouldn't admit it. The second time, it was also because she went berserk. The old man had the heart of a doctor, and his motive was to save the dying and help the injured. He was upright and straight. Saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. I was sacrificing myself for myself. That was a compassionate heart. Cough, cough, in short, it was also an accident. Other than that, alright, I also felt a bit guilty in front of little Enchanting, but can you blame me for this? This kind of coincidence happening in mid-air is probably the same as buying a $2 lottery ticket on the street and winning 5 million. It's all fate. As for other people, Jin Shiyue and I are innocent. I don't feel guilty even if I say it out loud. With Jiang Yage, alright, it doesn't seem to be too innocent. Although she has something on me, I can't deny that sometimes my brain is out of control and my mind is out of control. I take the initiative to ask her for more. This is my fault, I admit it. When I was with Sister Lufei in Shangjiang. That, alright, I also admit that my self-control is a bit lacking. At that time, in the parking lot of the car race, there were too many demons and ghosts. I admit that I was infected and did some stupid things. Later on, I did some shameful things with Sister Lufei on the side of the road, but, alright, I won't argue anymore. I admit it. And Sister Wu Tong, this matter, it's a bit hard to explain in a few words. But up until now, I can still maintain my innocence with her and didn't take the last step. This already shows that I'm as calm as Lu Xiaohui, okay? If it was in ancient times, I would have been given a silk banner and my name would have been recorded in history. Oh right, there's also Xiao Sun. Sigh, she's also a person with a bitter life. I don't even know what to do. Thinking of her, I also have a headache. Whatever I do is wrong. I originally wanted to keep my distance from her, but that incident happened in America. I can't just leave her to die, right? With my understanding of her, I'm afraid that she will never be able to walk out of here in this lifetime. But her temperament is gentle and stubborn. She seems to be very traditional. Yet, I can't control my state of mind and body. I'm afraid that the deeper she loves, the deeper she will be hurt. Even if I were to make her give up, I'm afraid that she would take things to the extreme. Then, would only be left with vexation. Oh, there's also Sister Tang Ying. From a certain perspective, we are also in a doctor-patient relationship. But this time, I'm the patient in her heart. She's treating me for my non-existent kidney disease. Forget it, there's no need to count. It seems that Enchanting isn't completely wrong. I really can't be considered as a good person. But since things have come to this, what can I do? Commit suicide to apologize to the world? Or should I just become a monk and end all troubles? None of these are solutions. Since things have come to this, I can only take one step at a time. Right at this moment, Lioli suddenly reminds him in his heart. Say, don't forget that you still have Annie in the Sea of Transient. She's the one who rolled in the sheets with you the most and made you the most satisfied. Chen Guang's face reddens. Of course, he wouldn't forget about Annie. Aren't I counting my romantic debts in the real world? Of course I remember Annie. Forget it, it's not like I'm criticizing you. Besides, what romantic debts are you talking about? In the matters between men and women, there's no such thing as who owes who. To put it bluntly, it's just consensual. Do you think that these girls who think that they owe others don't know that your butt isn't clean? Do they understand why most of them don't point it out? Isn't it because they're afraid that once they point it out, you'll be forced to leave? Is that so? You're Chen Guang, the savior of the heavenly Holy Grail, the master of the 3,000 worlds. The ruler of the earth element, the earth sauce exploder. In the endless god realm, you're an existence that isn't inferior to a god emperor. You're actually doubting yourself because of this matter? Just what are you thinking? As a man, don't you want to eat meat, drink wine, and be magnanimous? This plane, this universe, this planet, in the end, it's just the first step in your long journey. You're just a passerby here. When you do things in this world, you should do as you please. Why do you have so many misgivings? The so-called intersection between the soul and the flesh is just a small matter, an insignificant small matter. You're really infuriating me. You're really embarrassing me. Unexpectedly, Lioli suddenly flared up. Dear Cry advised from the side, Sister Lioli, calm down, calm down. Isn't he always like this? It's not like you don't know. Back then, because of his temper, didn't you? Shut up. Dear Cry. Lioli suddenly interrupted Dear Cry's words, making Chen Guang scratching his head in confusion. Of course, Chen Guang knew the meaning of Lioli's previous words. She wanted to say that his status wasn't that of an ordinary person. He was like an ancient emperor and shouldn't be troubled by these things. His style of doing things should be more heroic. To put it bluntly, he should take advantage of others when there's a chance, and not be lenient or soft-spoken. Even if he really messed up on someone's side and caused trouble, he had 3,000 worlds. Everything that happened here was insignificant to him. Just like how Lioli didn't seem to care much about the lives of the people in this world when she spoke. Chen Guang was sure that even if all the people on Earth died, Lioli's heart wouldn't be affected at all. As long as he was still alive, she didn't care about anything. I understand the logic, and you're right, but it's really difficult to do it. That's the worldview of God, the view of life. I'm a human, and I have my own view of life, which is different from yours. Even if I've experienced a lot, even if I've felt the incredible so-called ultimate power of the Mother Earth exploder in the punishment world this time, haven't I come back? Just as Enchanting said, I'm a mortal who owes a lot of debts after all. I can't get rid of the human flavor in my bones. Chapter 8:21. Look at how disappointing you are. How blind was I to choose you back then? Seeing that she had said so much to no avail, Liuli scolded him and went silent again. Chen Guang didn't argue with her. It was meaningless. After sending Xian Qin and Wu Miaowan off, he went home with Lu Fei. Speaking of which, he planned to buy this house and the house Zhuo Jingxi was renting. He had already arranged for his professional lackey, Lu Xiaoyang, to take care of it. There was no other reason. He was so rich that it wouldn't be comfortable renting someone else's house. Since he had nothing to do and he had more money than he could spend, he might as well buy the house completely and do whatever he wanted. He wouldn't have to rent someone else's house all the time and find it troublesome to change the appliances. Although this house wasn't considered a high-end neighborhood, it was close to the school. He would have to stay here for another year. When he graduated, it would be convenient for him to keep a junior in this house. Ahem. I'm just kidding. I really didn't think of it that way. Sister Lu Fei, why don't you go back to your own house? Chen Guang asked as he took out the key and opened the door. He changed his shoes and casually pressed the switch. The lights in the room turned on. Looking at the familiar furnishings in the room, he felt as if he had been in another world. He was still in this room last night, but when he saw the sofa, the small 42-inch TV, and the Supreme Tycoon phone in the corner of the living room, he felt very emotional. It felt like a long time had passed without him realizing it. Chen Guang secretly scratched his head. Perhaps it was because too many things had happened in the punishment realm, and he had once become a powerful existence like the Earth Bean Popper. Therefore, although only a day had passed, the things that he had experienced were unimaginable for many people in their lifetime. That's right, that must be it. Seeing that he was distracted, Lu Fei pushed him and rushed into the room. She said, "What's going on? Hurry up and go in. You're asking me why I'm not going home? I'm worried about you, right?" She would never admit that she had ulterior motives. Of course, only she knew what was in the depths of her heart. At this moment, she was more like a hungry wolf or a ferocious tiger. From the moment Xian Qin and Wu Miaowan left, Lu Fei had secretly made up her mind. Initially, she had not made up her mind, but since Xian Qin and Wu Miaowan had decided to stay in the Guangding General Headquarters in the city, wasn't this a godsend opportunity for her? She immediately changed her mind. Lu Fei didn't think too much about it. She just felt that the matter between her and Chen Guang had been dragged on long enough. Since a long time ago, she had wanted to do something with the most perfect man she had ever met, but in the end, perhaps because she wasn't proactive enough, or perhaps because everyone was busy, it had unknowingly been dragged to this day. Originally, the relationship between him and her had already become abnormal. That layer of window paper seemed like it could be pierced at any time, but it just happened to be one step short. As a result, now more and more people were catching up, and she was the one who was ahead of them. This made her feel that she was at a disadvantage, and she was very unhappy. I don't care who got to know me first. I was the one who first had this idea, and now I'm actually left behind. This can't be tolerated. In Lu Fei's view of life, this matter really wasn't something to be bothered about. In the past, it wasn't that I didn't like to play, but that my standards were too high, and I had never met a man who caught my eye. Only Chen Guang completely meets my standards, and I'm willing. Although he's younger than me, he's really great. No one can be like him, giving me the feeling of my heart racing wildly and unstoppably. I've read in a book that if a woman met a man, just looking at him, thinking about him, hearing his voice, and smelling his scent would make her heart race uncontrollably, then congratulations, you've fallen in love. At this time, there were two choices. Either stay as far away from him as possible, and never see him again. Maybe time would help you forget this feeling. Or, don't hesitate, bravely pounce on him, and ruthlessly bite him. Even if you bite him until he's drenched in blood, even if you're covered in cuts and bruises, even if you're hurt to the bone, you don't have to regret it. At least in this kind of life, there's a complete and vigorous love. It's better than looking back on the first half of your life when you're old and can't find anything worth remembering no matter how hard you try. Besides, Chen Guang's philandering has its advantages. It doesn't matter if someone is ahead of him, his heart is always very big, and I can always dig out a place for myself in his heart. His philandering is a disadvantage, but in a certain sense, it's also an advantage. I don't have to worry about getting hurt here. Also, I don't care what will happen in the future. I completely meet the criteria of having something happen with him. Now that I'm left behind, it's not that he doesn't care about me, and it's not that I don't have that idea anymore. It's just a coincidence that I missed it. Today, I won't miss another opportunity. Moreover, in Wutua town, when I was at my most desperate moment, didn't I also think that if someone came to save me, I would devote myself to that person? In the end, someone really came. It's really him again. Originally, because they haven't been in contact for too long, their relationship gradually became indifferent. But at this moment, Lu Fei felt that she had fallen into it again, and it was even deeper than before. Although he didn't ride a white horse and descend from the sky like what was written in fairy tales and only drove a bus, he was indeed the one who saved her from the trap. What happened after that, when she thought about it now, felt like a dream. Although he didn't feel that proud and didn't take it seriously, in my eyes, his power to destroy the world with a raise of his hand was simply earth-shattering, okay? If I didn't see it with my own eyes, if I didn't personally participate in this matter, I would simply think that I'm dreaming. No, even in my dreams, I can't dream of such an incredible thing. Where can I find such a man? I can't even find him with a lantern. Although he said that he can't return to that soul world anymore, Lu Fei, don't believe him. He was born extraordinary, and he has more secrets on him. For example, the cup that he asked me in Enchanting to bring up the mountain previously, there must be some secrets that I don't know, and he isn't willing to say. But it doesn't matter, who doesn't have their own little secrets? I have curiosity too, but I won't get to the bottom of it. When he feels that he can tell me, he will naturally say it. Now that he isn't saying it, he must have his reasons. It doesn't matter, let's cook the rice first, and when it's time for him to give in, he will naturally obediently give in. As expected of Lu Fei, she used her experience in the business field to get along with people, and it's really useful. At least compared to others, Lu Fei saw the matters between men and women very thoroughly, and she thought very clearly in her heart. Her temperament was also far more vigorous than the average person, and she didn't care about trifles, otherwise, she wouldn't have indulged Chen Guang so much in Xiangjiang, and it could even be said that she took the initiative to seduce Chen Guang. After entering the room, Lu Fei was not polite at all. Instead, she was like half a host, walking around very familiarly, pointing and talking. No matter how messy your clothes are, don't you think it's dirty? How long have you not swept the floor? Don't you find it hard to live alone? You look good outside, but your ability to take care of yourself at home, tisk, it's really incurable. Chen Guang was sweating because of her words, and he didn't know how to answer her. In fact, Chen Guang was not stupid. She had returned to Wujing, but Lu Fei didn't go back to her home. She must have a plot. The robbers in the world either rob money or rape women. After thinking about it, she was much richer than him, so it was impossible to rob money, so she must want to rape him. To be honest, Chen Guang was also quite tempted. Especially Lu Fei's graceful figure, no matter from which side, it was perfect and impeccable. She was used to wearing tight clothes, and her beautiful figure was completely exposed in front of Chen Guang. That straight and round butt was simply a gift from the Creator. Chen Guang looked at it twice, and felt that his saliva would flow down uncontrollably. From time to time, his mind would recall everything that happened with her in Xiangjiang. That incomparably tight elasticity, the delicate touch like silk when his palm touched her skin, and that night on the side of the Wujing Third Ring Road, when she was so tired that her mouth was unclear, and her blushing face was extremely bashful. What a deep memory. All of this was fiercely tugging at his heart. However, in life, there were always some things that had to be prioritized. After waiting bitterly for a long time, now that he finally had the opportunity to cultivate his inner strength, Chen Guang really didn't want to delay for a quarter of an hour. With his character, if he really made a move on Sister Lu Fei tonight, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to stop it until tomorrow morning. This was really difficult to make a choice. Where's the bathroom at home? I'm going to take a shower. I've been tired all day, and I'm all sweaty. Over there. Okay. Lu Fei responded, and then quietly walked to the side of the living room and closed the curtains tightly. She turned her head and blinked at Chen Guang, reminding him, "Don't open the curtains." Then she made a charming expression that said, "You know," and went straight to the bathroom while twisting her small waist. Usually, she didn't walk like this. Now that she deliberately twisted her waist to highlight her advantage, the meaning was self-evident. However, she was different from other coquettish bitches. She was naturally beautiful. Ordinary people would feel very awkward and uncomfortable when they walked like a cat, but when she walked like this, not only did it not make people feel uncomfortable, but it also exuded an extremely strong feminine smell, causing Chen Guang to be stunned for a long time. Sigh, Chen Guang actually wanted to ask Lu Fei if she wanted him to bring her a new bath towel, and maybe a change of clothes or something. But on second thought, as a girl, how could she not think of these things? Since she didn't say it, then she must be planning to use his bath towel. Although this was a little exciting, it was not unacceptable. As for clothes, she had already drawn the curtains. Was there a need to say? She clearly didn't intend to wear it. Yes, that's right, she really wanted to eat me today. Chen Guang swallowed his saliva violently. So painful, so tangled. At this moment, he seemed to be standing at the corner of heaven. On one side was the inner strength that he yearned for, and on the other side was the fresh and tender body that he yearned for. Both sides were heaven, and both sides had a great attraction. Heavens. Earth. I'm clearly a pure and good young man, why do I have to face such a difficult choice? So difficult, this is really very difficult. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.